Chapter 3102. Things seem to be more than that. Just as Immortal Du, Yi and Shan Zishan stabilized their bodies, they immediately activated their spiritual power and prepared to fly into the sky. Roar! A series of loud noises came out of nowhere, covering dozens of miles of space. Except for the seawater that had leaked within a few miles, the outer dozens of miles of seawater collapsed one after another. It was as if the entire Kueha Sea was about to fall into the bottom of the sea. Let's go. Although Shan Zishan didn't know what was going on, he was already terrified when he saw that the strange power of heaven and earth was so strong. He no longer cared about Xiaohua and Immortal Du who had lost a leg. With a roar, his body flashed with light, and he flew desperately to the north. Wu was seeing this. Immortal Du hurriedly activated his spiritual power and wanted to follow Shan Zishan. Unfortunately, they only flew for a few miles, and the entire space rang with a strange sound, like the cry of ghosts and howling of wolves, and also like the tide of thousands of beasts. An inverted hole that was almost 100 miles wide appeared on the surface of the sea. This huge funnel rotated crazily, and the previous confinement force and suction force instantly increased by almost 10 times. This force was beyond the imagination of the two nascent soul cultivators. It was like a pair of hands that were 100 miles wide had covered the two of them, and it was twisting with all its strength. It wanted to tear the two of them into pieces. This big hand completely froze the true essence of the two people, and they couldn't mobilize it at all. Rule power? How is this possible? Seeing this terrifying force, Shan Zishan's face changed greatly, and he cried out involuntarily. At the same time, his body and everything in front of him spun like a top, and he quickly rushed to the bottom of the sea. Seeing that he was rushing to the bottom of the sea without any strength, Shan Zishan didn't dare to hesitate anymore. He knew very well that if he couldn't rush out of this confinement before the change of heaven and earth, he was afraid that he would really be left at the bottom of the Kueha Sea. Therefore, Shan Xingzi clenched his teeth and slapped his forehead. A nascent soul that looked exactly like Shan Xingzi flew out. This nascent soul was no longer covered in blood mist. The moment it appeared, it waved the black ring in its hand and disappeared from Shan Xingzi's head. The benevolent child didn't even want his own physical body. He only wanted to use his nascent soul to teleport and seize a chance of survival from the power of heaven and earth. Seeing that Shan Xingzi had desperately used his nascent soul to teleport away, Immortal Du, he looked at Xiaohua, who had a strange smile on his face in his hand. He didn't care about doing anything else. He gritted his teeth and slapped his head. A nascent soul that was half a head taller than Shan Xingzi's nascent soul also appeared. It also activated the white ring in its hand, ignoring its physical body and Xiaohua, who was imprisoned, and disappeared in an instant. My wife is indeed scheming. Xiaohua's figure fell rapidly with the whirlpool. Everything in front of him became an illusion. Looking at Immortal Du and Shan Xingzi's slightly closed eyes and body that had lost their nascent souls, he thought with a smile, I finally escaped from their hands. But is there any way out at the bottom of the Kueha Sea? While Xiaohua was thinking, thousands of buzzing sounds sounded. It was the sound that Xiaohua encountered in the Kueha Sea that day. Xiaohua's head was in a daze. It was as if his primordial spirit was about to be shaken out of his body by this buzzing sound. Fortunately, Xiaohua's spiritual power was confined by the yin and yang talisman, so it didn't disperse. However, the golden core in his dantian shook violently with the buzzing sound. The layer of golden qi outside the golden core disappeared. The golden core and thunder core also turned into specks of light and began to dissipate. This Xiaohua was extremely shocked. Unfortunately, he didn't have the strength. He could only quietly wait for the final judgment of the power of heaven and earth. If he could escape with his life, so what if he didn't have cultivation? It was better than two nascent soul cultivators without a body, right? Suddenly, Xiaohua's ears became quiet. All the sounds disappeared again. Then, as if the big hand pressed down hard, Xiaohua's figure instantly fell 1,000 feet or even 1,000 feet. The light in front of him also almost disappeared. Half a mile away, a few small movements were particularly clear in this dead silence. Xiaohua looked up and couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that the nascent souls that Immortal Du, and Shan Xingzi, had just teleported out actually appeared near their bodies. However, at this time, the nascent souls looked extremely weak. Even their figures were somewhat transparent and dim. The rings in the hands of the two nascent souls were also gone. Presumably, it was the buzzing sound that could shatter the golden core that caused the two nascent souls to suffer such heavy injuries. It was also the buzzing sound that blocked the teleportation of the two nascent souls. It even sent the two nascent souls to their bodies. Immortal Du Yi and Shan Xingzi's nascent souls didn't dare to stop in front of such a power of heaven. Immediately, the two people's bodies emitted a faint brilliance again. Each of them took out two magic weapons to protect themselves. They actually had the same idea as Xiao Hua. They were waiting for the end of the power of heaven. Immortal Du Yi and Shan Xingzi even had a strange idea at the same time. Since the dead Xue Xue asserted that Xiao Hua could escape from Kuei-Hasi, it seemed that Xiao Hua could really escape. But since Xiao Hua, a nascent soul disciple, could escape, then how could the two of them, who were genuine mid and late nascent soul cultivators, not escape? Accept your fate. Xiao Hua sighed. Looking at the two nascent souls staring at him, he faintly smiled. His mind wanted to enter the space. Unfortunately, under the power of heaven, his mind couldn't enter the space. Xiao Hua couldn't even hide his head in the soil. The abyss was still the same, the brilliance was gone. The three people fell deeper and deeper into Kuei-Hasi. They didn't know how deep they were from the sea. In the abyss, the two nascent souls were not close to Xiao Hua, but they were also not far away. The nascent soul cultivators couldn't attack Xiao Hua again, but they could still see Xiao Hua's expression. It was just that this abyss was extremely strange. It was obviously in Kuei-Hasi. Even if the seawater fell, there was no water at all within a few miles of Xiao Hua's group. The endless seawater actually went somewhere unknown. Strange, Xiao Hua unconsciously thought of the last time he encountered the destruction of the Great Flag Reef in Kuei-Hasi. It seems to be different from this time. This is. Just as he was thinking, a whirlpool-like force came from Immortal Du Yi's side. It was like another invisible hand pushed him, and he was pushed to the left, less than 100 feet away from Xiao Hua. Not good. Xiao Hua saw the ferocious face of Immortal Du Yi and shouted in his heart. I want to see how you can escape from me. Immortal Du Yi's leg still hadn't recovered. How could he not hate Xiao Hua? Xiao Hua was still bound by the yin-yang spirit talisman and couldn't move. In particular, his gold core was on the verge of collapse. How could he be Immortal Du Yi's opponent? At this critical moment, the suction force that had been going down suddenly turned horizontally. The three of them flew horizontally. Immortal Du Yi was caught off guard and was thrown far away again. This time, the suction force was even stronger. The three of them once again doubled their speed. Xiao Hua looked up and saw a light that was smaller than the eye of a needle in the distance. It was extremely eye-catching in this pitch-black darkness. The three of them were simply too fast. Xiao Hua had only just seen the light when it had already closed in. At this time, the light had actually turned into a space several hundred feet wide. Moreover, as Xiao Hua flew closer, the space rapidly expanded. By the time Xiao Hua and the others were truly sucked into the space was actually several hundred miles wide. Xiao Hua felt as if he was an ant in front of it. Sumera Buddhist formation? Xiao Hua suddenly realized. There is actually a Sumera Buddhist formation here? No, the power of this formation seems to be even greater than the Sumera Buddhist formation we encountered in the Buddhist sect's ruins. If it isn't some Sumera Buddhist formation, then it must be some other formation of the Tao sect that is even more powerful. Xiao Hua thought. His figure was sucked into this space by the enormous suction force. When an extremely loud and clear sound flashed by, the entire space was silent, but the blood in Xiao Hua's body was about to boil. He knew that this sound had not disappeared at all. Then, in front of Xiao Hua's eyes, a faintly discernible silver brilliance flashed and disappeared. Whoosh! The binding of the black and white talismans around Xiao Hua's body was easily cut open by the silver brilliance. This Xiao Hua didn't have time to think too much. Another wisp of cyan brilliance flashed and disappeared. This time, the cyan brilliance actually penetrated Xiao Hua's body and meridians. The magic power in his meridians that hadn't been activated was swept away by this brilliance. Ha! What is this? The cyan brilliance flashed, and the entire space rippled with layers of gray ripples. These ripples came in circles, like huge growth rings on a withered tree. Xiaohua and the others were passing through these growth rings. Whoosh! The corners of Xiaohua's eyes twitched. His gaze had yet to break away from this strange fluctuation of gray, when another hazy blue brilliance flashed. Xiaohua's body tightened, as if something was being sucked away by this brilliance. But what disappeared, Xiaohua didn't notice at all. 5 elements annihilation great formation. Not far from Xiaohua, Shan Zizhen's extremely shocked voice came. This voice was unexpectedly high and low in the gray fluctuation, appearing especially strange. How could this immortal world great formation be here? Sumeru Buddhist formation. Taoist Master Du, he seemed to have thought of something and also shouted in panic. This seems to be the Buddhist sect's supreme Buddhist formation before the ancient Buddhist sect was annihilated. Schwab, hearing this, Xiaohua was also greatly shocked. The names of these two formations were terrifying just by hearing them. How could their true power be measured by ordinary cultivators? At this time, the fourth red brilliance faintly flashed again. The reaction in Xiaohua's body was even more intense. Along with the brilliance, more than half of his Jindan was instantly extinguished, and the sword essence flowing in his body also inexplicably disappeared by 30%. Not good. Xiaohua suddenly thought of the situation when Sunset Island reappeared in the past. The white bones on the white bones, the rings on the white bones and other things. Almost without thinking, he didn't even have time to put away the invisible golden sword in his hand, and threw all the storage bags and spirit storage bags into the space. At this time he almost forgot that his mind couldn't enter the space just now, but now he could. The last brilliance hadn't appeared yet, but Xiaohua and the others had already passed through who knows how far away in the gray fluctuation of the same growth rings. Fellow Taoist, do you? How did you become old? Shan Xingzi and the others naturally didn't have time to kill Xiaohua, and did their best to resist the power of the 5 elements annihilation great formation. At this time, Shan Xingzi suddenly cried out in surprise. Shan Xingzi, you also have white hair. Hearing this, Taoist Dui naturally turned pale with fright. He raised his eyes to look at Shan Xingzi and hurriedly cried out. Xiaohua hurriedly looked at the two. Sure enough, the two middle nascent soul stage cultivators no longer had the same youthful appearance as before. A layer of white frost-like color dyed their hair and eyebrows visible to the naked eye. Moreover, the wrinkles on their faces seemed to be carved with a pair of knives. As the two passed through the growth rings, they were carved one by one. The passage of time, this gray fluctuation is actually another kind of great formation. Xiaohua suddenly realized. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the strange gray fluctuation in disbelief. These two nascent soul stage cultivators have a lifespan of nearly 2,000 years, but in this great formation, it turned into a flick of a finger. Thinking, Xiaohua raised his hands and looked at the invisible golden sword in his hands. He couldn't help but be shocked again. Strange, why didn't I change? Song of Time. Song of Time. This is the Song of Time demon formation. Suddenly, Taoist Dui shouted as if he had gone mad. I heard Master mention it before. This is the most famous great formation that the demon race used to deal with my Tao sect in the ancient times. But before Taoist Dui finished speaking, his face inexplicably dried up. His head, which was originally made of flesh, suddenly began to shrink and gradually turned into a skeleton with only skin. Swoosh! Xiaohua's crisis also came. An earthen yellow brilliance faintly flashed. Xiaohua didn't have time to check other places. He only knew that all the golden cores in the same nebula in his dantian had disappeared. Even the lightning core and the true inner core were as small as broad beans. Ha ha ha! Shan Xingzi laughed wildly. Song of Time. Great Meru Buddhist formation. Great 5 elements annihilation formation. Who could be so generous? On the Dawn Rain continent, who could avoid these 3 great formations? This isn't anyone's generosity. It's an innate divine restriction. You, why haven't you changed? Suddenly, Shan Xingzi saw Xiaohua, and then looked at Taoist Dui who had already turned into a skeleton in disbelief. He shouted even more incredulously. How can your lifespan surpass mine? But before he could say anything else, the hand he stretched out also withered. Along with the gray fluctuation of the growth ring, it immediately turned into white bones. The power of time, invincible. Seeing these two mid-nascent soul cultivators buried in this mysterious song of time demon formation in just a moment, Xiaohua also felt some sympathy. That's right, even if he didn't know why he didn't fear this song of time, he still had the 5 elements annihilation formation that he couldn't resist. Seeing the silver and green brilliance intertwining together flash again, the invisible golden sword in Xiaohua's hand immediately turned into nothingness. At the same time, this brilliance brought something that didn't completely disappear into Xiaohua's body. Then it swept past his dantian. The already collapsed golden core and lightning core instantly disappeared, as if they had never existed. Damn it, Xiaohua laughed bitterly. Biting his lips slightly, he clenched his fists. He didn't know that the golden core and lightning core that had disappeared, and even the nebula that had been condensed by the golden energy from before, had been wiped out by the formation, left behind a bit of pitch black. That pitch black was now stained by the invisible sword, and was even more invisible. This was also the benefit of going through the third gold lightning tribulation. After a few waves of brilliance, Xiaohua's Buddha relic also began to collapse. The 1000 Buddha diagram outside the Buddha relic was also completely separated into specks of light, barely covering the Buddha relic. In just a moment, the Buddha relic was almost as invisible as the golden core in his dantian. Under the Buddha relic, the black and white intertwining outside the Naiwan palace, the seal that was nimbly flowing from time to time was finally revealed. And as soon as this seal appeared, 2 faint black and white lines immediately rushed into Xiaohua's middle dantian. There, the same 2-colored seal was flowing in a very regular pattern with the seal of the Naiwan palace. Not only that, in the 5 elements annihilation formation, Xiaohua's spiritual sense and Buddhist consciousness were also completely dissolved, and now he couldn't release them. Even Xiaohua's mind was somewhat muddled. Looking at the flickering 5-colored brilliance in front of him, as well as the dense growth rings, Xiaohua laughed bitterly. He understood that this was probably the most dangerous place in this spatial passage, right? Sure enough, a swoosh sound entered Xiaohua's ears. Kacha, 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 kacha. 5 dazzling rays of light intertwined and simultaneously penetrated Xiaohua's Naiwan palace and the 2 black and white seals outside his dantian. Those 2 seals flickered at the same time. The black and white lines violently flickered, and in an instant, cracks appeared in the void, as if wanting to tear Xiaohua's Naiwan palace and middle dantian apart. Unfortunately, these powerful assassins couldn't escape from the 5 elements. What kind of power could they display in this 5 elements annihilation formation? But just as they were born, they were immediately annihilated by the 5-colored brilliance that swept past. Xiaohua didn't know how many years he had been distressed, how many schemes he had racked his brains for, how many methods he had thought of, to break the seal without attracting the attention of the seal's owner, but it was broken so easily. Originally, he thought that the opportunity to break the seal was with the Shaman King in Meng Mountains. But at this moment of life and death, at the bottom of the QC, where he had never dreamed of, in this so-called 5 elements annihilation formation, the seal was easily broken as if peeling off the shell of a boiled egg. This opportunity was something that Xiaohua had never thought of. As the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. Of course, after the seal in Xiaohua's middle dantian was broken, a muffled dragon's roar came out from Xiaohua's middle dantian, and the heterogeneous true energy in his middle dantian was immediately annihilated by the 5-colored brilliance. Even when the 5-colored brilliance penetrated into Xiaohua's body, the sword origin and the 9 stars soaring sun-flying sword were also annihilated. Only the trace of Xiaohua's primordial spirit and the 8 primordial spirit imprints gathered together, and were forcefully sent into his middle dantian. But after the seal in Xiaohua's Naiwan palace was broken, a layer of golden light appeared outside his Naiwan palace. Under this golden light, the 5-colored brilliance couldn't penetrate it. In short, because of the primal chaos energy in Xiaohua's body, he was able to escape from the Song of Time demon formation. But his Taoist, Buddhist, and sword cultivation were completely annihilated by this 5 elements annihilation formation. completely annihilated, only leaving behind a little bit of foundation left from the tribulation lightning of 3 elements. Xiaohua's mind was also muddled by the Song of Time demon formation, and he was also injured by the 5 elements annihilation formation, gradually becoming muddle-headed. Looking at the gray fluctuating growth rings in the entire space, and the 5-colored brilliance blooming like a lotus, Xiaohua's vision gradually blurred, and he gradually closed his eyes. However, just before he closed his eyes, he saw a 7-colored conch-like object that was strangely condensed not more than a foot away from him. Xiaohua very habitually probed with his mind to put this object into his space, but when he touched it, his mind became dizzy, and he fainted. He didn't even know if this object was put into his space or not. In the colorful space, a naked man with his eyes slightly closed, his slender body shuttled through the gray fluctuations of growth rings at an extremely fast speed. The 5-colored brilliance also swept across the man's body. This kind of scene was very dazzling. After an unknown amount of time, the huge space gradually shrank. The 5-colored brilliance divided into several rays, and the gray ripples also gradually slowed down. Woo with a soft sound, the naked Xiaohuarua escaped from the space tunnel with a swimming fish. Outside the tunnel was an endless sea of blue water. Then, with a loud woo sound, countless bubbles emerged from Xiaohua's body, carrying him towards the distance and high altitude. And behind Xiaohua, the space became even smaller, finally turning into an existence smaller than the tip of a needle. Not to mention nascent soul cultivators, even tribulation transcendence cultivators and Mahayana cultivators wouldn't be able to easily find this place in this endless Guihe Sea, right? Xiaohua floated higher and higher along with these bubbles, and at the same time drifted further and further away. Taoist Master Du Yi and Shan Xingzi, who were chasing him, had already turned into ashes. The dead Shueshue was right. If all of them went to the depths of the Guihe Sea, Xiaohua would definitely be able to survive, but after this great Meru Buddhist formation, clear Song of Time demon formation, and 5 elements annihilation formation, where was this place? Who would be so idle as to set up these 3 strange formations in the depths of the Guihe Sea? And the power of these formations was so huge. Don't forget, in the millions of Meng mountains in the Huda village, what kind of cultivation base did Elder Wu have? He also didn't dare to rashly touch the Yin and Yang seals on Xiaohua's Middle Dantian and Naiwan Palace, but these 2 incomparably powerful seals within these 3 formations were like yellow talismans being gently opened. Could it be that these 3 formations were like what Shan Xingzi said, innate divine restrictions? There were too many mysteries, too many unsolvable mysteries, too many dangers. This was also the reason why cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent rarely came to the Guihe Sea. Chapter 3103. Xiaohua, Shan Xingzi and Dui had disappeared. 1 fainted, 2 fell and no one knew. However, they were being chased by the early Yuanying stage Thunder Meng Taoist. Although Reverend Lei Meng's cultivation base was not as strong as the 2 mid-stage nascent soul cultivators, but with the help of the mystic technique of Imperial Thunder Sect, and under the condition that Xue Shiweha had no choice but to cast a blood curse on the 2 nascent soul cultivators, he was barely able to keep up with the 3 of them from afar. The deeper Thunder Meng Taoist chased, the more frightened he became. He was not like Xiaohua, he did not have much preparation, and did not have many elixirs and other items. Seeing the increasingly thin heaven and earth spiritual energy, he hesitated. Even if he flew to the end and occasionally met some sea beasts, he did not dare to waste his magic power to kill them. The Yuanying in his body that was very sensitive to heaven and earth spiritual energy had already told him that the further ahead, the heaven and earth spiritual energy could no longer support the magic of a Yuanying stage cultivator. It could only consume the power of the Yuanying stage. And this was extremely bad news for Thunder Meng Taoist. However, the more serious it was, the more inconceivable Thunder Meng Taoist was that the 2 mid-Yuanying stage cultivators were chasing after Xiaohua. Just as Thunder Meng Taoist was pondering whether to continue the chase, in the distant sea, an extremely small hole appeared, and waves of cryptic fluctuations came from the distance. Not good. An instinctive fear, a shock that came from the Yuanying stage, immediately arose in Thunder Meng Taoist's heart. What kind of heavenly might is this? Immediately, Thunder Meng Daoist had another intuition. Xiaohua. That's right, that should be the direction Xiaohua and the other two went. Thinking, Thunder Meng Daoist immediately released his divine sense, wanting to see what was going on. Unfortunately, not only was the location of the celestial phenomenon too far away, but the layers of fluctuations in the air also destroyed Thunder Meng Daoist's divine sense, making it impossible to reach. Forget it, Thunder Meng Daoist thought for a while, then gritted his teeth. This is also I's final limit. Xiaohua, if there is no more news of you, I will also be powerless. While speaking, Thunder Meng Daoist gathers his magic power and flies towards that direction. Unexpectedly, the celestial phenomenon was extremely powerful. Wave after wave of strange vibrations not only blocked Lei Meng Reverend's divine will, but also limited his magic power. Even his nascent soul was restless because of an inexplicable fear. It was as if this fluctuation could kill a nascent soul cultivator at any time. By the time Reverend Lei Meng arrived at the location of the celestial phenomenon, everything was already gone. When Lei Meng Daoist had just appeared, countless tiny vortexes had spread out over tens of miles to hundreds of miles, with tiny bubbles bubbling out like boiling water. However, in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, there were no longer any abnormalities. The sea surface was calm, and the sea breeze blew from time to time. What a tranquil sea! If not for Lei Meng Daoist's suspicion, who would have thought that the famous nascent soul cultivator, Wu Ming, who had fought a great battle with a Dao sword cultivator, was buried here? Lei Meng Daoist did not dare to return like this. He was clear that even if he left some divine will mark here, under the unpredictable storms of Kueha Sea and the extremely thin spiritual energy of this world, he would be wiped out in a few days. Furthermore, Kueha Sea is so vast. Once he leaves, he may not be able to easily find this place again without a divine will mark. Therefore, Lei Meng Daoist once again lingered for a few days, until he could no longer find any abnormalities. During this period, Lei Meng Daoist naturally gritted his teeth, and used the secret technique of Imperial Thunder Sect. The result was exactly as he had expected. There was no trace of Xiaohua. Everything had vanished like smoke. Sigh, although I could not catch up previously, but at least I know that Xiaohua is in front. At least there is a trace of hope, a trace of hope. Lei Meng Daoist sighed as he raised his head, looking towards the extreme east. He even released his divine will for over 100 miles, but did not find any abnormalities. He muttered, "Now it's all good. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The sea is also the sea of destruction." A nascent soul cultivator suddenly rose into the sky, but before he could even emit a brilliant light, he immediately fell. What a tragedy, what a pity! My Imperial Thunder Sect. At this point, Lei Meng Daoist finally understood Master Qianleizi's mood that day in Great Thunder Palace. There was no other reason. In front of the mysteries of heaven, human strength was just inaction. Man can conquer the heavens. That was a lie. Xiaohua Lei Meng Daoist looked at the sea beneath his feet that had some waves, and then at the sky that had some dark clouds and muffled thunder. He knew that another storm was about to come, and he definitely could not stay here any longer. He sighed. Since the first time this old man met you in Thunder Accumulation Cave, this old man has once again sent you off. It can be said that we are fated to meet. Your background is unknown, and your cultivation is also hard to fathom. This old man does not know if the information sent by the sword cultivators of Huan country is true. However, this old man still hopes that you are the true disciple of Imperial Thunder Sect that this old man was thinking of. Now sigh. At this point, Lei Meng Daoist sighed again, unable to continue. Since Xiaohua had already fallen, even if Master Qianleizi had some thoughts of protecting Xiaohua, this kind of protection no longer had any meaning. It was impossible for Imperial Thunder Sect to let a living Xiaohua, a living nascent soul nameless, return to Sky Thunder Peak. Then would Master Qianleizi still protect Xiaohua? Even though Lei Meng Daoist did not like this kind of ending, he also understood that Imperial Thunder Sect was unable to face the doubts of the other sects of the three countries regarding Xiaohua. Imperial Thunder Sect was unable to explain the various strange things about Xiaohua that the sword cultivators of Huan country had mentioned. A living nascent soul, no matter if it is foundation establishment or qi refinement, is still more valuable than a dead nascent soul. Xiaohua, you also do not blame Lord Sect Leader. You have already left, but Imperial Thunder Sect is still here, and so is Myriad Thunder Valley. Facing the reality, Lei Ming Daoist felt powerless in his heart. He casually said a few words, circulated his magic power, and gradually left. Within this region of several hundred li, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Lei Ming Daoist was afraid that he would not be able to find the burial place of the 3 nascent soul realm cultivators. However, before Lei Ming Daoist could fly out of Gui Hisi, a lightning sound transmitting talisman flew in front of his eyes. When Lei Ming Daoist used his divine sense to take a look, he could not help but be shocked. What? The ones who died in the bamboo forest were Shui and Wu Ming? How is this possible? When I was ordered to leave Imperial Thunder Sect, Wu Ming seemed to have not come out of seclusion yet. And that Shui seems to be a foundation establishment disciple. How could they have arrived in front of me? Or perhaps Lei Ming Daoist listened, raised his eyes and looked ahead and said thoughtfully. After Wu Ming came out of seclusion, he did not stop at Myriad Thunder Valley at all, and directly rushed to the bamboo forest with Shui. Only then could they have arrived in front of me. But how could they know where Xiaohua flew to? Unfortunately, all of these were only guesses. Shui had no choice but to leave. Xiaohua, Daoist Du Yi and Shanxingzi had all died. How could they know what had happened? As for why Daoist Du Yi and Shanxingzi were chasing after Xiaohua, Immortal Ascension Sect and Immortal Music Sect might be able to give him an answer. However, what was the status of Daoist Du Yi and Shanxingzi? Could the 2 sects easily answer? Even if Qian Lazy wanted an answer, it would not be good to ask, right? After all, the 2's cultivation had surpassed the sect masters of the 2 sects, and they no longer asked about the affairs of the 2 sects. If Qian Lazy wanted to ask, he could only point the spearhead to Shanxingzi's master, Feng Shu of Immortal Ascension Sect, and Daoist Du Yi's master, Xianlu Sect's Funshan Cultivator Chan Si Miao. 2 Funshan cultivators. Lei Ming Daoist knew that this was impossible. In fact, it was just as Lei Ming Daoist thought. When he returned to Great Thunder Palace and reported this matter to Qian Lazy, Qian Lazy's face was gloomy, and he said that Shui went to Myriad Thunder Valley as soon as she came out of seclusion. And Wu Ming of Myriad Thunder Valley also just came out of seclusion. After talking with Shui for half an hour, he immediately left a jade slip and left Imperial Thunder Sect with Shui. As for the jade slip, Qian Lazy also looked at it, and it only contained Zhuo Minghui's last words, and a sentence to Wu Qing. Wu Qing, Daddy is gone. Although Daddy feels guilty towards you, Daddy knows that there are some things that must be done. What Daddy wants to do, you may not know in your whole life. Perhaps no one in Dawn Rain Continent will know. But Daddy must do it. When you grow up, you will naturally understand. Alas, yes, there are some things this sect must do. Although I don't want to do it. Qian Lazy sighed and returned the jade slip to Zhuo Minghui, and said, Xiaohua was expelled from Imperial Thunder Sect. There is no need to hide anything. From the moment Xiaohua left Sky Thunder Peak, no matter if he was a terrifying phoenix or a nascent soul nameless, everything about him has nothing to do with my Imperial Thunder Sect. Yes, subordinate understands. Lei Ming Daoist bowed and replied. As for Myriad Thunder Valley, as I said before, it still exists. Qian Lazy looked at the pale Zhuo Minghui, and waved his hand. Wu Ming has done a lot for my Imperial Thunder Sect, and he left, but we can't let him be bitterly disappointed in the underworld. Yes, subordinate understands. Lei Ming Daoist's heart warmed, and he turned to Zhuo Minghui and said, Everything about Xiaohua from now on has nothing to do with Myriad Thunder Valley. If anyone provokes us again, they can come find me. Yes, disciple understands. Zhuo Minghui only knew about the news of Wu Ming and Shui's death now, and she really didn't dare to believe it. Moreover, until now she didn't know why Shui and Wu Ming died, and why Xiaohua died. To them, this matter is just a secret. Chapter 3104. Soon after, the Imperial Thunder Sect's order to expel Xiaohua was no longer kept a secret. It quickly spread throughout the entire country of Xi, and then spread to the 3 countries faster than the wind. The terrifying phoenix is Xiaohua, and because Xiaohua violated the Imperial Thunder Sect's rules, his qualifications as a disciple were revoked and he was expelled from the sect. But because of his achievements in the Great Battle of Dao Sword, his cultivation was not abolished. All the cultivators who heard this news were extremely shocked, and they lamented that the world changed too quickly. Just a moment ago he was still a hero in the Great Battle of Dao Sword, but in the blink of an eye, he was a sinner. He became a pitiful worm without a sect. Of course, there were still some small sects that began to look for Xiaohua to be an elder or a consecrator. After all, Xiaohua's reputation was too resounding. With such a consecrator, not to mention other things, it would be much easier to recruit disciples. But in just a few days, there was another secret from the Huan country that spread to the 3 countries. The nascent soul cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect was none other than Xiaohua. Moreover, Xiaohua was a sword cultivator, and also knew soul techniques. If Xiaohua's expulsion from the Imperial Thunder Sect was a small stone thrown into a pond, then Xiaohua's nascent soul cultivator Wu Ming was a huge rock. The entire 3 countries were shaken. For several months, all the cultivators were talking about only Xiaohua. Some admired him, some were jealous, some were emotional, some were sympathetic, and there were many cultivators who were laughing at the Imperial Thunder Sect. Yes, being able to expel a nascent soul cultivator from a sect, this was unheard of in the Donrain continent. However, whether it was a small stone or a huge rock, in the end, it would fall into the pond. When the news of Xiaohua being chased by 2 middle-stage nascent soul cultivators and 3 nascent soul cultivators falling in the Guihe Sea spread, all the discussions and rumors immediately disappeared. This news was definitely not leaked by Thunder Tablet Daoist and the Imperial Thunder Sect. After all, Thunder Tablet Daoist was not the only one who saw Daoist Du, Yi and Shan Xingzi chasing after Xiaohua. 3 nascent soul cultivators fighting without regard for face naturally attracted people's interest. The rumors and discussions disappeared, but everyone seemed to be listening, waiting for an explanation, waiting for a result. But what made them disappointed was that no matter if it was the Immortal Ascension sect or the Immortal Music sect, they didn't have any intention to explain. Soon, sword cultivators settled in Celestial Patrol City. Heavenly Devil sect established itself in the Cultivation 3 Kingdoms, and the true bloodlines of various cultivation clans were gradually stimulated. On the Donrain continent, more and more exciting events appeared. Xiaohua, a nascent soul cultivator who rose like a comet, was soon forgotten by everyone. Other than Fairy Hongxia, who was in the Valley of Ice, holding a pink jade slip in her hand, her eyes filled with tears. At this moment, she was filled with regret. She was extremely regretful of her own willfulness, and also somewhat jealous of Shueishue's selflessness. She was probably the only one who knew the truth of Shueishue's death for Xiaohua. Alas, everything was already in the past. All regret was useless. All the sweet nothings and tit-for-tat were already in vain. Fairy Hongxia looked at the frozen ice shards in the Valley of Ice. She really hoped that Xiaohua would mysteriously appear again. However, she knew that it was just wishful thinking. Although Xiaohua was formidable, facing 2 middle-stage nascent soul cultivators, there was absolutely no possibility of him surviving. Furthermore, the 2 middle-stage nascent soul cultivators had already fallen without any news. How could Xiaohua possibly survive? Darling Xiao, Fairy Hongxia muttered. This concubine knows that she was wrong. I missed out on the good time to spend with you. Although this concubine was somewhat demanding of you, this concubine truly loved you. However, now that I saw Shueishue's love, this concubine knew how shallow I was. For your survival, Shueishue was willing to give up her life. This concubine asked herself. If this concubine had made a choice in that instant, this concubine could have done it too. If I was like little sister Shue's forbearance, this concubine would definitely not have done it. This love is the love that husband deserves. This concubine is ashamed of her inferiority in front of Shueishue. However, husband, since you have left, the words that this concubine said to you are still valid. This concubine is husband's wife in this life. In this life, I will only have darling Xiao as my husband. Today, this concubine swears a blood oath that I will never talk about dual cultivation with anyone else. Finished speaking, Fairy Hongxia's ice phoenix body flew out, wailing in the ice valley, crying blood. Xiaohua, Shui in a secluded valley in Xuanlei Palace. There were 2 small mounds at the bottom of the valley. In front of the mounds stood Sun Shu, but her tone was very indifferent. Senior sister knows that if you were in the sky, the 2 of you would be birds flying together. If you were on earth, the 2 of you would be intertwined branches. Senior sister is very jealous of the 2 of you. Regardless of life or death, you can be together. With each other's company, how can there be loneliness in this world? Loneliness has always been intentional. A faint voice came from above the valley. Junior brother Qian, you've come? Sun Shu did not seem to find it strange, and did not raise her head. I thought that you still bore a grudge against Xiaohua, and would not come to pay your respects. Humph, how can I bear a grudge against junior brother Xiao? Qian Diheng's figure flew to the bottom of the valley, his white Taoist robe the same as Sun Shu's. Your Heavenly Thunder Palace disciples, as well as the many disciples who returned from Sky Patrol City. Aren't they all complaining about Xiaohua? Sun Shu glanced at Qian Diheng and said coldly, I seem to have heard someone say it himself. Of course I said it. Qian Diheng did not deny it. I even said it in front of the sect master. But I know even more clearly. Someone needed me to say it. I also did get that messaging talisman from Xiaohua. And that messaging talisman indeed. There's no way to explain how it ended up in my hands. Since you understand, Sun Shu still wanted to say, but was stopped by Qian Diheng. There are some things that you don't have to say out loud. But there are some things that you have to say even though you know it's against your heart. You know better than me how Xiaohua is. I know better than Xiaohua what you're thinking. But why don't you say it out loud? Sun Shu blushed slightly and shook her head. There are some things that are better left unsaid. Yes. There are some things that are better said than not. Qian Diheng also nodded. Although this Qian has said those words, it is still better than not saying them. Even though I said it out loud, I still respect junior brother Xiao. Not to mention that he's a nascent soul cultivator. Even if he's a spirit-severing cultivator, he's still my junior brother Xiao. There's no mistake in this life. Saying this, Qian Diheng walked to the 2 mounds and knelt down. Although there were no tears in Sun Shu's eyes, there was a kind of sadness in them. After a while, Qian Diheng got up from the ground and looked at Sun Shu. He said indifferently, although Xiaohua left, the Imperial Thunder Sect still has me. If you have any problems, you can find me. Saying this, his figure flew into the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Damn it! How could this guy Zhang Qingxiao, who had experienced Xiaohua's life and death several times, could not determine whether Xiaohua was dead or alive? Holding a jade slip in his hand, he frowned and looked at the night sky. My Devil Realm secret technique can determine whether you're dead or alive. Unfortunately, I don't have your blood essence. I don't even have a strand of your hair. Zhang Qingxiao scratched his head, but then his eyes lit up and his figure immediately turned into wind. I forgot. You still have Jiang Lu, or by your side. Junior sister has Luer's life jade slip. If you die, Lu, or will naturally not be alive. But if Luer is no longer here, what should junior sister do? Zhang Qingxiao was probably the first one to realize that Xiaohua was not dead, right? As for Sword Domain, in a sword palace, Wuxia, who still looked like she was in her 20s, simply looked at the sword slip in her hand with disdain. She sneered. Daoist Xiao, that's Daoist Xiao. It would be strange if he could die. Not to mention 2 Yuanying stage cultivators, even if there were 10 he would still be fine. Saying this, she casually threw the sword slip in her hand on the table on the stone wall in the distance. Then she opened her mouth and saw that there was a blue ripple in the sword palace. Layers of sword chi rippled in the sword transformation pool like water waves. As Wuxia opened her cherry mouth, a wisp of sword chi more sparkling than crystal rushed into her mouth from the sword transformation pool. After half a cup of tea's time, the hedgehog-like sword chi around Wuxia withdrew back into her body. Wuxia frowned and slapped her forehead. Something that looked like a nascent soul flew out from her forehead. It was a little pink fox the size of a fist. However, the little fox's tail shook slightly. There were 4 of them. Behind the little fox, a series of afterimages were fanned out. Swift. Wuxia sat down cross-legged and opened her mouth. The pink chi rushed into the air. The little fox let out a GG sound and opened its mouth. The pink chi entered its mouth. With a light boom, the little pink fox suddenly expanded. Its foretails were especially obvious. Pa, 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 pa. 4 consecutive sounds rang out as the little fox's foretails swung. Inexplicable, shattered phantoms appeared from the little fox's tails and gradually gathered together in front of Wuxia's eyes. When Wuxia saw it clearly, she couldn't help but frown. Although these afterimages were broken and incomplete, she could clearly see that they were the surging waves of the sea. In all the afterimages besides the waves, she couldn't see anything else. Strange, Wuxia's face flushed red. She patted her hand and the four-tailed little fox entered her body. She frowned and said, "It seems that Xiaohua really went to the Kuai-He Sea. However, my divination technique can't see whether he's dead or alive. If Xiaohua is dead, it's impossible to create this illusion. But if Xiaohua isn't dead, I should be able to see some traces of him in this illusion. I've never encountered such a situation before." On the Donrain continent, people related to Xiaohua were more or less thinking about whether he was dead or alive. But no one would have thought that Xiaohua would really appear in front of them one day. That attitude was so high that it made people look up to him, and so inconceivable. However, this time was so long ago that it was enough to make people forget. Chapter 3105. Everything in the Xiaoyu continent seemed to have nothing to do with Xiaohua, whether it was hatred or longing. Right now, he was in the depths of the sea, where the waves were surging. His eyes were tightly shut, and there was no expression on his face. He was neither sad nor happy. His entire body was slightly curled up, and his hands were clenched into fists. His body was moving up and down along with the waves. Sometimes he would be thrown high into the air, and sometimes he would be smashed into the bottom of the sea along with the waves. But no matter what, Xiaohua's body would always float back to the surface of the sea very quickly, just like a bird feather, neither flying nor sinking. After an unknown amount of time, the peaceful Kuai-He Ocean began to bustle with noise and excitement. Previously, there were only a few fishes, but now there were gradually more and more fishes. One after another, fishes that were much bigger than Xiaohua rushed out from the bottom of the sea, and cheerfully chased each other through the air. One after another, water pillars shot out from the top of these fishes' heads. At the same time, the cyan scales on these fishes' bodies began to shine under the scorching sun, and speckled with splendor. The fishes flying in the air let out a cry, and dozens of them flew down. They originally wanted to get close to these fishes, but the water pillars that shot up hit their wings. Some of them nimbly landed on these fishes and grabbed several scales. Some of them were hit by those water pillars, and fell into the water with a pucici sound. But as soon as they touched the water, these fishes flew up again, and with a ga sound, they flew high into the sky. Occasionally, a loud hong sound would be heard, and an enormous black fish that was several dozen zhang long, like a mountain, would rush out from the azure water, and rush into the air. Following that, waves of water would surge out. That rumbling sound was actually emitted from the mouth of this enormous fish. This enormous fish's body actually appeared extremely quickly, and in an instant, it would bump into those careless fishes. Pu muffled sounds were heard, and many fishes were actually killed into blood, and slowly slid down from the scales on the fish's body. Hong Long Long, the enormous fish frightened the fishes, and once again landed on the surface of the sea. Following that, waves of water soared into the sky, and like an earth-shattering water curtain, it once again knocked down many startled fishes. The sky that was originally filled with fishes swimming and birds flying was instantly shattered. What's more, after the giant fish swam away, it was followed by tens of thousands of small fish. These small fish were sparkling and were even smaller than a thumb. Thousands of sparkling lights were like quietly sprinkled mercury on the surface of the jade-green water. It was so beautiful. The sea birds that had been scared away by the giant fish were now chirping excitedly in the air. One by one, they swooped down without any regard for their lives. Every time they touched the surface of the sea, they would immediately fly higher. Their slender beaks were holding small but plump fish. The chirping of the birds became louder and louder, and the sky became even noisier. The sea birds that came out of nowhere covered the surface of the sea within 1,000 feet. Every one of them was in a hurry, but in an orderly manner. They all participated in this rare feast. Specks of spirit fragments, splashes of water, and layers of bird feathers. It was a scene of flourishing vitality. When there were fewer little fish, there would naturally be fewer seabirds. The sky slowly turned dark again. Following the unknown undercurrent in the sea, behind the tens of thousands of small fish, Xiaohua floated along with the waves. A few seabirds that had arrived late had yet to taste the feast of the sea and sky. They immediately changed their direction, turned their heads and swooped down unwillingly, wanting to take advantage of Xiaohua. However, when they were still a few feet away from Xiaohua, Xiaohua's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. Those eyes were not pitch black, only reflecting specks of starlight. Those tens of thousands of starlight were actually faintly moving. Several seabirds seemed to be frightened by the starlight. They forcibly stopped their descent, flapped their wings, and hastily fled in a sorry state. While they were struggling, a bird feather leisurely floated towards Xiaohua's face. As if the bird's chirping had alarmed Xiaohua, those starlight violently swayed. A ball of fire flashed in his eyes, and his pitch-black pupils slowly appeared. At the same time, a kind of indescribable sorrow emerged from those eyes. Xiaohua's eyes moved, and he lightly blew a breath. That fluttering feather was blown to the side, touching the water, and floating on the surface of the water. This is Xiaohua woke up. With a glance, he saw the vast and boundless sky, as well as the familiar burning clouds, and the gradually setting sun. However, without waiting for him to take a second look, with a plop, Xiaohua's entire body sank into the water. Xiaohua hastily urged his magic power, wanting to use the water avoidance art. Unfortunately, although he used the Heart Sutra, his meridians were empty. Not to mention a trace of magic power, even that golden core, had long since disappeared. Damn it! Xiaohua opened his mouth, and a mouthful of seawater immediately rushed into his mouth. Xiaohua helplessly closed his mouth, and with a stroke of his hands, his body nimbly rushed out from the bottom of the sea. After decades of hard work, I've been beaten back to my original state. Xiaohua's body was originally as light as a goose feather. Later on, after being contaminated with primal chaos energy in the endless void, it returned to its original state, and became as heavy as an ordinary body. And now, he slightly balanced himself, and his body was once again lying flat on the blue waves. Even his hands were stretched behind his head. The only thing missing was a green foxtail in his mouth, and he looked just like a shepherd boy in a mountain village. Life is always this cruel. As soon as you see the dawn, as soon as you see a trace of hope, your pride will be smashed to smithereens. Xiaohua looked at the dusk sky, the white clouds and the dogs, all dyed in blood red, and his heart was very desolate. Xiaohua slightly pondered in his heart. Ever since he woke up in the Dawn Rain continent, until now, fate had been playing tricks on people. From a first-level qi refining cultivator, how many twists and turns had he gone through? How much bitterness had he suffered? With great difficulty he cultivated to the early golden core stage. With great difficulty, he fought for a great reputation in the great battle of Dao and Sword. But due to a freak combination of factors, he was unexpectedly expelled from the Imperial Thunder sect. Losing his sect wasn't particularly painful, but what made Xiaohua's heart turn cold was that the frost bamboo he had always placed his hopes on actually wanted to plot against him. What kind of Buddhist expert was this? With great difficulty he came out from the ruins of the Buddhist sect, but he was actually chased by two middle nascent soul stage cultivators. Although Xiaohua had always been worried about this pursuit, he had always been thinking of ways to avoid it, but he didn't expect the momentum to be so fierce, far exceeding his ability. Although he used the Phoenix illusion, and Shueishuehe had no choice but to give up their lives for him, he was still captured. If it weren't for the inexplicable threefold formation in this Kueha Sea, he definitely wouldn't have been able to escape from the hands of two middle nascent soul stage cultivators. Dozens of years of cultivation were like children in their eyes, and the affairs of the world played tricks on people. Although Xiaohua escaped with his life, But all of his cultivation was crippled. The golden core that he had painstakingly condensed had already turned into a trace of flowing water, falling into this Kueha Sea and disappearing without a trace. Not only did the cultivation of the Tao sect turn into nothing, even the Buddhist sect's Buddha Sarira had almost disappeared. If it weren't for the 10,000 Buddha painting in the ruins of the Buddhist sect, perhaps the Sarira would never be seen again. Of course, within this threefold formation, the yin-yang seal that was like a fishbone in Xiaohua's throat was also easily broken, no longer leaving behind a trace of hidden danger. Moreover, Xiaohua's soul cultivation was also not affected by these threefold formations. It could also be considered a great fortune amidst misfortune. Let's see how bad it is, Xiaohua thought, and was about to use his divine sense. Unfortunately, the Buddha Sarira was gone. How could his divine sense still exist? Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. Forget it. Xiaohua's mind fell into the space again. The space naturally wasn't affected by the threefold formation. That green-robed Xiaohua sat cross-legged in the sky while holding the sword gourd, his hands occasionally forming hand seals. Cough cough, fellow Taoist. Xiaohua's mind, which had turned into a jade archive, coughed and asked, "Is everything all right?" Green-robed Xiaohua didn't even raise his head, as if he already understood everything that happened, and replied, "This space is independent of the Dawn Rain continent. It won't be affected by the formation outside. However, the refining of this spirit-slaying light is indeed troublesome. You'll have to wait for a while longer." "Fellow Taoist has worked hard," Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a smile. "Now we've temporarily avoided danger. We won't return to the Dawn Rain continent in a short period of time, so fellow Taoists can slowly refine this spirit-slaying light." "And I know." Green-robed Xiaohua pointed at the restriction in the distance and said, "Now, is it possible to refine some basic pills?" "There's no need to trouble fellow Taoist," Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a smile. "Although the spirit-slaying light isn't that urgent, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Gue Hisi is scarce. All magic tools aren't easy to use, so the spirit-slaying light is still more useful. This penniless Taoist can handle the matter of the pills myself. In I's opinion, these spiritual herbs that have undergone yin and yang must be extraordinary. Simple pills must also have extraordinary effects." "I hope so." Green-robed Xiaohua heard that he didn't need to do it himself, so he lowered his head and continued to ponder over the refining of the spirit-slaying light. Jade Archive Xiaohua stretched out his hand. That three-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace appeared in his hand. He flicked his hand again, igniting the Samadhi true fire, and began to warm the furnace. In the middle of refining the pills, Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at other places. Everything was normal, apart from Little Yellow and Little Black, who were lying on the ground with their limbs in a strange posture. There were faint fluctuations from the 9 suns and 6 moons flowing into their bodies. Even the ice worm king egg and other items that Xiaohua obtained at the beginning seemed to be gradually exuding vitality. And with such vitality, it's a world. Jade Archive Xiaohua was secretly delighted. He then looked at the furnace. Black light flashed around his body, and he once again escaped into the yin side of the netherworld. The yin side of the netherworld was different from the yang side. The netherworld sea was turbulent, and gusts of netherworld wind blew in the entire space. Where did the vitality come from? There was only the power of death emitted from the black sun. On the contrary, the netherworld lotus and the netherworld bamboo were still faintly shining. The stone statue was also flickering with demonic fire, constantly burning Zhang Xiaohua. Looking at the netherworld lotus, Xiaohua's heart ached again. He clearly knew that today's situation, for Shui, would be many times better than her cultivation achievements. But subconsciously he still hoped that the lively, competitive, and possessive Shui who saw things she liked would be alive and standing in front of him. Chapter 3106. Good fortune, good fortune. Jade Archive Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. He took a few more glances at the netherworld lotus before leaving the netherworld. Refining a low-level pill was very easy for the Jade Archive Xiaohua, but when Xiaohua took the pill, he discovered that he seemed to have made a mistake. Yin and yang seemed to have an effect on living spiritual objects, but it didn't have an obvious effect on this spiritual grass. Or perhaps Xiaohua didn't notice this effect. The effect of the newly refined pill was no different from what Xiaohua usually took. Of course, Xiaohua wasn't too depressed despite his disappointment. His cultivation had always been very difficult. Even if he cultivated from the beginning, it would only take a few decades. Xiaohua had now made a decision. No matter how thin the heaven and earth spiritual energy was in this Kuehesi, he would only choose a small island and lay down a formation. He wouldn't ask about anything else. He would raise his cultivation to late nascent soul stage, or even spirit severing stage. Thinking about the cultivation on the Danring continent, apart from a very few periods of seclusion, Xiaohua spent most of his time busy with karma and couldn't cultivate in peace. Therefore, the improvement of his cultivation had always been slow, like a child staggering in the mud, and every step he took was extremely difficult. It was also because of this that Shui and Wuxian fell. Every time Xiaohua thought of Shui and Wuxian, the two people closest to him on Danring continent, his heart would feel like it was pierced by a needle. Now he already knew that his enemies were not only the three nascent soul stage cultivators from Xi, but also the two old monsters whose cultivation had reached spirit severing stage. How could he repeat the same mistake and return to Danring continent without full confidence? After taking a few medicinal pills, Xiaohua slowly activated his cultivation method to refine the medicinal pills. At the same time, he also activated the dragon transformation art and celestial body bestowment technique. He crazily absorbed a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy from the surroundings of Kuehesi. At first, it was very small, but then a strong gale gradually formed. After Xiaohua cultivated for a moment, he suddenly discovered with astonishment, that's not right. The deeper I fly into Kuehesi, the thinner the heaven and earth spiritual energy is? Why is the heaven and earth spiritual energy here far richer than before encountering the triple formation? Although it still can't compare to Danring continent, it's enough for cultivation. Thinking of this, Xiaohua was immediately overjoyed. Since the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was rich, he naturally had more confidence in recovering his cultivation and advancing to the nascent soul realm. Maybe we should find an island. Xiaohua couldn't use his divine sense at this time, so he naturally looked up. Unfortunately, the waves were boundless in all directions, so how could there be any land? Do you want little yellow and the rest to come out? Xiaohua's search was fruitless. Instead, he thought of the two little fellows. But these two fellows finally took the initiative to cultivate. Isn't it inappropriate to disturb them like this? Swoosh! Right at this moment, several silver shuttle-like little silver fishes passed by Xiaohua's surroundings. Quite a few silver fishes even blankly bumped into Xiaohua's body. In the air, the previously dissipated seabirds gathered once again and flew toward Xiaohua while shrieking. Strange! Xiaohua turned his head strangely, only to see that behind him, more than 100 zhang away, something that looked like a brown flower branch poked out of the sea and rushed toward Xiaohua's direction. Looking at the bottom of the flower branch, there was another several zhang of dark brown scales. Wasn't that another rather large sea fish? Great! Xiaohua couldn't help beaming with joy when he saw it. Truly a mount sent by the heavens. It's better to let the two little fellows cultivate. This Xiao can handle such a small matter by himself. Immediately after, Xiaohua lay down on the ground again. His figure drifted along with the waves, but he released his divine sense. When the large fish got closer, only several zhang away, his figure suddenly flew up and easily crossed the sea surface, landing on the back of the large fish. Good boy. This fish should be several tens of zhang long, right? Xiaohua's figure landed very gracefully. Although his Fei hadn't recovered yet, he still had ethereal steps and other martial arts, so he wasn't afraid of being discovered by the large fish. However, the place where his feet landed was precisely the dark brown scales, which were even larger than his feet. Looking at the fish's spine, which was even larger than a house, Xiaohua was stupefied again. Roar! Seemingly aware of the slight discomfort on its back, the large fish shook a few times. An indescribable huge force was born from the scales, forcing Xiaohua to have no choice but to jump up. Fortunately, the large fish quickly swam towards the east, and didn't make any other abnormal movements. Seeing that the large fish was stable, Xiaohua also sat down cross-legged. In order to not disturb the large fish, he didn't activate the immortal body bestowment technique. He only took a few medicinal pills and used his heart to refine his true qi in his body, condensing his true essence and slowly recovering his fa li. That large fish seemed to be looking for food, and also seemed to be migrating. In short, it swallowed many fish along the way as it swam towards the east. Xiaohua leaned on the large fish's back, where the flower branch was located, and it was quite comfortable. Unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. These peaceful days only lasted for several dozen days. Although the large fish was still swimming towards the east, its body sank into the sea. Xiaohua was helpless. He could only jump down from the large fish's back and continue to soak in the sea. At this time, Xiaohua already had some true essence in his meridians, but it was still somewhat insufficient to activate the flight technique. Of course, this true essence could be used to refine the flight talisman. However, after refining the flight talisman, he would have to spend true essence to activate the flight talisman. Who knew when he would be able to find an island in this vast sea? Xiaohua also wasn't in a hurry to refine the flight talisman. He only focused on taking medicinal pills. In less than 2 days, another large fish passed by Xiaohua's left side, but this large fish was swimming towards the south. Xiaohua didn't say anything further. He landed on the large fish's back and followed it towards the south of the Kueha Sea. After several dozen days like this, the true essence in Xiaohua's body gradually increased. Only then did he have the confidence in his heart. He flew up from the large turtle shell that he had just changed into. He activated the wind escape technique and flew towards the east. His movement didn't matter, but the large turtle immediately sensed it. With a so sound, it shrunk its neck and dived deep into the Kueha Sea. It was unknown how many years had passed before it dared to come out of the water again. Although he already had enough true essence to support the flight technique, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He continued to take medicinal pills while activating the dragon transformation art and the heavenly infusion technique to speed up his cultivation. Needless to say, the heavenly bestowment technique was already much stronger than before. Without the seal on the middle dantian, the dragon transformation art was obviously much stronger than before. What was special was that when the dragon transformation art was activated, it was relaxed, smooth, and cheerful. Xiaohua really enjoyed it. It was far from the previous oppressive and obscure feeling. Sure enough, as Xiaohua thought, the further east he went, the denser the heaven and earth spiritual qi became. Although the change wasn't particularly big, the amount of heaven and earth spiritual qi entering Xiaohua's body increased by a lot. Xiaohua could keenly sense it. However, although he had flown for more than 10 days, Xiaohua's feet were still ice-cold seawater. He didn't see any reefs or islands. Looking at the dark clouds in the distance that looked like they were dancing ghosts mixed with a dozen hurricanes rushing towards him, Xiaohua couldn't help but complain inwardly. He had trained in the Kueha Sea before and knew that the Kueha Sea was mostly filled with violent winds and torrential rains. In these 10 days, he hadn't encountered any storms. It was truly rare. He naturally also knew that this huge storm might not have any effect on him. But the true essence that he had painstakingly cultivated would be completely exhausted once again. It's best to find a place to shelter from the rain. Xiaohua hurriedly looked around. There seems to be an island over there. Far to the east, at the edge of the torrential rain, Xiaohua could vaguely see a few dark spots under the monstrous waves. These dark spots were mixed with some colorful mottled spots. It was somewhat eye-catching. Unfortunately, Xiaohua currently only had his eyes and soul consciousness. His soul consciousness couldn't reach far. It was difficult for it to be of much use. Immediately, Xiaohua urged his flying technique and hurriedly flew towards those dark spots. Swoosh! Just as Xiaohua approached those dark spots and recognized that they were some reefs that were exposed above the sea surface, the majestic rain and the strong wind blew over. The pitiful Xiaohua was also unwilling to use the golden light protecting his body. With a sweep of his soul consciousness, he found a rather large cave and went in. Although the wind and waves were big, the rain poured down like a waterfall. It had nothing to do with this abject cultivator. Xiaohua even sat cross-legged in the somewhat damp cave, and raised his eyes to look at the gloomy sky. He said to himself with extreme regret, "Alas, this storm is still a bit weak. There isn't even any heavenly thunder. It's really boring." Soon after, Xiaohua closed his 5 senses, urged his heart sutra, and entered secluded meditation. This secluded meditation lasted for more than 10 days. When he used the sun-shrouding art, his soul consciousness improved and Xiaohua woke up again. He wasn't in a hurry to come out of the cave and hurriedly checked his cultivation. When his soul consciousness entered his lower dantian, he couldn't help but be stunned. As early as when he was in the 5 elements annihilation great array, Xiaohua already knew that the golden core he had painstakingly spent more than 720 dry separation pills and absorbed countless gold qi and sword qi from the sword mound was completely destroyed by the great array. He had no choice but to cultivate from the beginning again step by step. But at this time, in his soul consciousness, it wasn't like he had imagined. There was no trace of the golden core at all. On the contrary, at the location of the golden core, where the 2 lightning cores were at the front and back of the golden core, and where the tens of thousands of golden cores were originally condensed from gold qi were at, there were traces invisible to the naked eye but detectable by soul consciousness. But these traces seemed to be different from the golden core from before. Previously, in Xiaohua's lower dantian, that golden core was the location of true essence, and all the magic power came from there. The 2 lightning cores circled around the golden core one after the other, and traces of lightning rushed into the golden core. All the other gold qi cores didn't produce true essence or magic power. But now the traces of these golden cores were no different from the traces of the golden core. At least, Xiaohua's soul consciousness couldn't see any difference. So much so that if Xiaohua didn't know that these were traces of the lightning cores being erased, he wouldn't have been able to determine anything special from the traces. Chapter 3107. In other words, these thousands of traces were all the same. They were either traces of the gold core or traces of gold qi. But it was clear that Xiaohua's true essence, which was condensed from true essence, flowed into these traces. These traces were naturally traces of the gold core. Damn it! Xiaohua couldn't help but groan. It was already so difficult for him to condense a gold core. Now a gold core nebula actually appeared in his lower dantian. Not to mention having a nascent soul. Even if he wanted to restore this nebula-shaped gold core to its previous gold core realm, how much effort would it take? Heavens, are you playing with me? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Unfortunately, this was only the first abnormality after the gold core was annihilated. Immediately after, Xiaohua discovered the second abnormality. Because as true essence flowed into his lower dantian, the traces of his gold core didn't change at all. In other words, Xiaohua could sense his own gold core, but it didn't increase in size like an ordinary gold core. Could it be that there are too many nebula-shaped gold cores? My true essence can't be distributed? These gold cores can't increase in size? Xiaohua could only suspect like this, but he already had a premonition in his heart. It seemed that the complexity of the matter was far from what his divine sense could see. As for what the real answer was, the current Xiaohua naturally couldn't explain it. He could only wait until his cultivation gradually recovered in the future. Then he could carefully search for it. Thus, Xiaohua temporarily put his lower dantian aside and sent his divine sense into his middle dantian. Following the breaking of the seal in my middle dantian, this Xiao seems to remember that this Xiao cultivated some carefree heart sutra before. Moreover, I cultivated it to the 18th layer of qi refining. And I'm afraid that day when this Xiao insisted that qi refining should be at the 18th layer, it was because of this. Before Xiaohua's divine sense entered his middle dantian, he thought to himself, however, since this middle dantian is also true qi and also an aura refining cultivation base, I'm afraid that it was also completely wiped out by the 5 elements annihilation great formation, right? As Xiaohua thought, his middle dantian was empty, somewhat similar to his lower dantian. However, there was no trace of an aurous core. Instead, it was a sword-shaped primordial spirit that flashed with a faint golden light. Around it were 8 swords of different sizes that rotated extremely slowly. Xiaohua's origin soul that had entered the dream executioner's body looked like a sword, but the golden light around it made it look like a human. However, if one looked closely, they would see that there was a small heart inside the sword. It looked like a beating heart. This surging wave spread out from the sword shape, and through the golden light, it spread to the 8 small swords around it. This small sword also trembled along with the heart-shaped undulations, forming the shape of a heart sword. An indescribable sense of righteousness and sharpness emanated from this sword-shaped primordial spirit. It felt as if it could pierce through the heavens. What a pity for my sword origin. Xiaohua was a little regretful. He knew in his heart that his ability to transform into a sword was simply too coincidental. There would not be a second sword tomb in this world, and there would not be any more gold qi for him to condense sword essence. If he followed the Huan country's sword cultivation method, he would have to work 100 times harder than before to enter the sword transformation realm. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's mind suddenly lit up, as if he had thought of something. Almost impatiently, his divine sense left his middle dantian, and he took out a jade slip. Wasn't this the secret technique from Hutu village's Ji-man? After Xiaohua carefully read it, he closed his eyes and pondered for a long time. A rare smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This was the first time Xiaohua smiled from the bottom of his heart after the great change. That's right, it should be like this. At this moment, Xiaohua was like a pearl of wisdom in his chest. He laughed softly and said, "My middle dantian's 18th layer of qi refining cultivation has been crippled, but the foundation of my true qi is still there. Isn't it precisely because I can transform my true qi into the righteous qi of Confucian cultivators? Moreover, my sword intent is the heart sword. Isn't it the same as the core heart incantation left by Huang Yi? The most wonderful thing is that the core heart incantation is in the inheritance of Confucian cultivators. I also obtained a core heart from a mysterious space. That core heart is the most righteous qi in the world refined by Confucian cultivators. It can be used to display the core heart incantation. Everything really comes naturally and seamlessly." Go, Xiaohua clapped his hands. The Confucian secret technique, core heart, tortoise shell, and Confucian clothes were all sent into his middle dantian. They fell in front of his heart sword primordial spirit. His entire middle dantian was immediately illuminated by a red light. Everything was scarlet red. An indescribable feeling emerged from Xiaohua's heart. This feeling was a kind of rebirth, a kind of freedom, a kind of uprightness, a kind of breathing, a kind of lofty sentiments hiss. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. The cultivation of Taoism was also extremely subtle. When one cultivated to a profound level, it would also make one's ears prick and cheeks scratch with joy. All kinds of strange feelings would come one after another. Similarly, it was also indescribable with words. However, Xiaohua had never experienced such a grand and unyielding aura like the heart of cinnabar, which pressed forward courageously. It had never appeared even in the sword intent of Huan country's sword cultivators, and Xiaohua's uncondensed core heart. And it just so happened that Xiaohua was extremely fond of this incomparably upright momentum. It was also in line with his temperament. How could he not be astonished? Confucian cultivator. Mysterious Confucian cultivator. After Xiaohua's astonishment, he was delighted and sighed. A cultivation path that can stand up to my Taoism. Sure enough, it has its own uniqueness. It's a pity that this righteous path of heaven and earth was actually destroyed by Taoism. It's really a pity. While Xiaohua was thinking, that Confucian robe landed in his middle dantian. It was precisely on the body of the sword-shaped primordial spirit. A rather refined Xiaohua stood majestically in his dantian. An indescribable momentum was emitted from within the red light. After settling the sword-shaped primordial spirit in his middle dantian, Xiaohua's divine sense once again fell into his Naiwan palace. When he saw the layer of faint golden seal characters outside his Naiwan palace, Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. An ancient memory immediately poured into his mind. Innate divine restriction? Rabbit talisman? Golden crow talisman? Xiaohua closed his eyes for a moment. The expression on his face was one of ecstasy and confusion. The extremely powerful capital star formation on Dawn Rain continent, is actually only one of the 360 innate divine restrictions on my Niwen Palace. Moreover, it's the simplest defensive formation. The other formations, aren't they even more powerful? But how can my Niwen Palace have so many powerful innate divine restrictions? And I only need to comprehend more of these divine restrictions. Won't I also be able to attain Tao? Unfortunately, Xiaohua's primordial spirit could no longer be separated. After thinking for a moment, he truly sent the almost invisible Buddha Sarira into his Niwen Palace. Then he sent the exquisite leaf scripture, that was almost completely repaired in the Buddhist sect's ruins, into his Niwen Palace. Similarly, the exquisite derivation pagoda immediately emitted a Buddhist light as soon as it entered. The entire pagoda began to slowly expand until it was more than 90 zhang tall. Every layer was about 10 zhang tall, and emitted a golden radiance from within. Understood. Seeing the exquisite derivation pagoda in such a state, how could Xiaohua still not understand? This exquisite derivation pagoda isn't purely used to store gold leaf. Its greatest function is to cultivate Buddha Sarira. Sure enough, when the Buddha Sarira entered the exquisite pagoda, the entire first layer of the exquisite pagoda emitted countless golden radiance like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers. That's right, there's also the golden crow I obtained from the Buddhist sect's ruins. In the Buddhist sect's ruins, Xiaohua only obtained a few Buddhist artifacts and the golden crow. Now he naturally had to carefully examine it. Heaven's eye connection? The golden crow that was sent into the exquisite pagoda was also opened. Seeing the golden radiance on the pages, Xiaohua frowned. What is this? However, when he briefly looked through the contents of the book, he couldn't help but be overjoyed again. He thought to himself, people often say that one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later on. Today, I escaped from the Buddhist sect's ruins, and escaped with my life from the hands of 2 nascent soul cultivators. As expected, I was extremely lucky. Those with the heaven's eye connection can see the 4 great colors of the world through their eyes. It is called the heaven's eye. What the heaven's eye sees, from the 6 paths of the earth to the 6 paths of the earth, all living beings, whether near or far, covering or fine, all colors can be seen. Isn't it tailor-made for this Xiao? The Dharma eye in this Xiao's left hand seems to be increasingly useless, and I don't know how to cultivate the Dharma eye soul imprint between my eyebrows. In particular, isn't the Mo Zhao corpse from the Mo Zhao Black Forest also useless? The 3 elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain once had a secret technique that could use the brain matter. The brain matter can also improve one of the 5 senses of the fleshly body. Isn't this heaven's eye connection suitable for use? It's really a good thing. Soon after, Xiaohua handed the golden centipede and the secret technique to the Buddha Sarira. The 3 things Xiaohua relied on for his cultivation were also heavily damaged by the 3 layers of formations. One was the nebula gold core of the Tao sect in the lower Dantian. One was the overwhelming elixir core of the Confucian cultivator in the middle Dantian. And one was the Buddha Sarira of the Buddhist sect in the upper Dantian. Now they were all destroyed and rebuilt. Under Xiaohua's arrangement, each of the 3 primordial spirits began the most basic cultivation. Xiaohua's divine sense once again entered his meridians. That primordial spirit cultivating the dragon transformation art was still as heavy as before. Without the seal on the middle Dantian, a feeling of relief emerged from the primordial spirit. Xiaohua knew that his meridians were not damaged. He only needed to let his primordial spirit continue cultivating the dragon transformation art. Sooner or later, it would succeed. Xiaohua's divine sense once again looked at the primordial spirit in his fleshly body. It was still energetically cultivating the immortal body empowerment technique. Only then did he return his divine sense to his bloodline. As early as when he entered the Guihe Sea, Xiaohua had already given the Blood Drop Paradise's magic slip to the primordial spirit in his bloodline. Later, because of the 3 layers of formations, Xiaohua put the blood ring into the space. He looked at his bloodline and found nothing unusual. His mind entered the space again and took out the blood ring. However, when he took out the blood ring, Xiaohua's mind found something different. What is this? Xiaohua stretched out his hand, and a blood-like 5-colored crystal fell into his hand. Why is this thing next to Shang Huaming's god statue? Could it be? This is something from the god statue. Wasn't this god statue sealed in the jade rui by the Empress of the 10,000 Demon Realm? Chapter 3108. Jade Archive. Xiaohua frowned as he looked at the god statue that was already standing upright in his space. Because when the entire space was separated into yin and yang, Xiaohua didn't see this god statue, so it must have happened after that. And in the following period of time, other than grief, Xiaohua mainly cleaned up the mess and didn't pay too much attention to the god statue's appearance. Today, not only did the god statue appear, but it also sent out this blood droplet-like crystal. It was really strange. What happened? Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then looked at Dai, who had returned to the appearance of a little girl. However, this girl had been moved to another place by Xiaohua. Just like Jiang Luer, she couldn't come into contact with other things in the space. Could it be because this girl returned to her human form? Her aura can make this jade scepter release the god statue? But even if the jade scepter can mistake Dai, for the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress, this god statue can't send out this crystal for this reason. Jade Archive. Xiaohua was very puzzled, but suddenly he grasped at the air again, and a rainbow-colored conch-like object appeared in his hand. An inconceivable thought appeared in his mind. Could it be this thing? This seven-colored conch was found by Xiaohua in the Third Great Formation. At that time, this thing was stagnant in the corner of the Clear Time Demon Formation, which was also the moment before Xiaohua fell unconscious. Xiaohua really forgot about this matter. If he didn't remember this matter, he wouldn't know whether to put this thing into the space or not. Xiaohua's mind withdrew from the space, holding the 5-colored crystal in one hand and the 7-colored conch in the other. His eyes narrowed slightly. Although his face was very calm, his heart was like a raging river and overturning sea. The 10,000 Demon Realms Empress said clearly that she came to the Dawn Rain continent to find a person called Ming Hua. This person's status in the 10,000 Demon Realm, the Empress didn't say clearly, but she only mentioned something about the Demon Clan's body extension technique. It was said that it was a supreme technique that only great sage venerables could cultivate. Ming Hua, who could cultivate this technique. How bad could he be in the 10,000 Demon Realm? What was special was that this so-called 10,000 Demon Realm Empress came to the Dawn Rain continent to search for the person. Xiaohua knew the weight of this person even if he used his heel. But it just so happened that this dark mantra had a connection with Shang Huaming. The statue left behind in Shang Huaming's ancestral temple could actually be absorbed by the goddess's jade rui. Xiaohua understood that the founder of Shang Huaming's sect was most likely related to the dark mantra. Of course, in the millions of Ming Mountains, Xiaohua also saw a Grand Witch Elder called Ming Hua. But looking at the Grand Witch Elder's ferocious and ugly appearance, Xiaohua was too lazy to associate him with the delicate Empress of the 10,000 Demon Realm. Xiaohua simply didn't take out the Jade Scepter again. Who cares if that dark mantra is the dark mantra that the Empress spoke of? But now this rainbow-colored conch, which was hidden in the 3-layered array, had actually caused the Jade Rui to release the god statue, and the god statue had even released the mysterious 5-colored crystal. It could only mean that the rainbow conch had an extremely important connection with the dark mantra. Thinking about the 10,000 Demon Realm again, Xiaohua could almost conclude that this rainbow-colored conch was the original body of dark mantra. That dark mantra must have also encountered this 3-layered array back then. No, it was very likely that there was a great secret in this 3-layered array. Dark mantra wanted to explore this secret with his own power, so he was trapped in the array. But dark mantra's cultivation base couldn't resist the corrosion of the Song of Time after all. In the end, he had to transform into his original body and condensed in one place of the array, not daring to move at all to resist this array. If it wasn't for meeting Xiaohua, Minghua probably wouldn't know how long he would stay here. Of course, Xiaohua's various guesses were based on the premise that the release of the 5-colored crystal was due to the rainbow-colored conch entering his space. If there were other reasons that he didn't know, he wouldn't be able to say anything. Under this 3-layered array, what secret is hidden? Xiaohua thought of this, and his gaze became a little distant. Is it an ancient relic? Or a treasure of the demon clan? It actually allowed a powerful demon clan expert to come from the demon realm to the Dawn Rain continent, and even be trapped in this array for so many years? Thinking of the power of the three-layered array, Xiaohua looked at the dark rainy night again and mocked himself. Who cares what kind of treasure it is? Not to mention that I don't know the location of the three-layered array. Even if I can find it, I'm afraid I can't go in again. 5 elements annihilation array. All things of the 5 elements will be destroyed by it. Song of Time demon array. Even a nascent soul with a lifespan of 1,000 years will be obliterated by it. TSK. The heavens really have eyes for me to be able to take it out to escape. Immediately, Xiaohua didn't dare to throw away the rainbow-colored conch, and also sent it into the space. However, he was far away from Jiangluer and Dai, and didn't let them be together. Then, Xiaohua was about to send the 5-colored crystal into the space, but he stopped again. He thought to himself, the bone tempering technique of the Sunset Island has been cultivated for a long time. But I haven't obtained the Earth origin, so the bone tempering has been unable to reach perfection. This needs to be found. But the primordial spirit left in the bones can't rest. I might as well let it practice Shang Huaming's bone tempering technique. Since I'm going to cultivate it, I'll also comprehend the 5-colored crystal. That's right. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's eyes lit up again. Also, that heavenly law's embodiment technique, my physical body seems to have comprehended it, but I can't use it. This Xiao's bones, can they be used? Also, if this rainbow-colored conch is really the dark flower, then this 5-colored crystal is also a holy object. Even if it isn't, I can still obtain some body extension technique from him. Can I cultivate the body extension technique outside of the heavenly law's embodiment technique? Thus, the bone tempering that had been stagnant all this time was further cultivated under Xiaohua's arrangement. After arranging the bone cultivation, Xiaohua sent the blood ring back into his body. Although there was no primordial spirit left in his blood vessels, it was just as Xiaohua had thought before. He had succeeded in cultivating the blood shadow technique. This blood drop paradise was a technique of the devil realm. Using the blood shadow technique to control his blood vessels, and using the black flame and devil chi in the blood ring, he could cultivate it. In particular, Xiaohua's physical body was a demigod body. It could block all probing with divine sense, so the devil chi in his blood vessels wouldn't leak out. Crack, crack, crack. Xiaohua had just finished arranging everything for his cultivation, and had just pulled his mind out of the mysterious dark cloud of soul cultivation, when he heard the sound of heavenly thunder outside. Countless lightning bolts were wreaking havoc on the surface of the Gui he see as if there was no one there. Ha 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 ha! Xiaohua laughed a few times. He urged his remaining primordial spirit to fly out of the cave, and shouted loudly, "Why is the heavenly law? Life and death come first. The heavenly law is not few. I will follow the path of karma. Today, I will enter the cycle of reincarnation again. I will cultivate the golden body again. Don't talk about looking down on the world. Don't talk about revenge. I will hold up the sky with one hand and kill all the evildoers in the world." Just as he finished laughing, a lightning bolt as thick as a thumb struck down. It was the power of heaven and earth laughing at Xiaohua's pride. Go! Xiaohua released the Buddha Sarira. The Buddha Sarira now was different from before. In the past, the Naiwan Palace was in the Buddha Sarira. The Buddha Sarira couldn't come out of Xiaohua's body, so Xiaohua used the projection of the Buddha Sarira. Now that the Buddha Sarira was reborn, it fell into the sea of consciousness of the Naiwan Palace, so it could freely enter and leave the Naiwan Palace. As Xiaohua sent the Buddha Sarira out, the lightning bolt really hit the Sarira. Zilala. A little bit of golden light came out of the Sarira. The storm in the QC had always been the main theme. This storm that Xiaohua had not encountered for a long time had lasted for more than 10 days. Xiaohua had even sent the Buddha Sarira into the sky, and was continuously bombarded by the heavenly lightning for 4 to 5 days. In the end, the heavenly lightning might have been exhausted. Only then did it stop and change into a torrential downpour. In the beginning, Xiaohua didn't dare to use his body to touch the lightning of the Buddha Sarira. He could only hide under the Buddha Sarira. Afterwards, Xiaohua simply took out that indescribable small bucket. The small bucket also attracted the lightning. When the lightning fell into the small bucket, a small amount of lightning leaked out from the small bucket's damaged area and landed on Xiaohua's body. This little bit of heavenly lightning was undeniably hard for Xiaohua's body to bear, but every time the lightning struck, the nebula golden core in his lower dantian would flicker and give birth to purple lightning. Moreover, during the lightning strikes, an indescribable feeling of fullness filled Xiaohua's body and even flowed into the space. Therefore, Xiaohua gradually used this little bit of heavenly lightning to temper his body. Seeing that the rain had stopped and the clouds had dispersed, a slanting ray of sunlight shone through the thick black clouds, like a sword of light piercing into the sea. That boundless brilliance was born from the waves of snow that were still rolling up. Xiaohua put away the Buddha Sarira and was about to take out a set of Taoist robes from the space. However, his gaze fell on the extremely dazzling seven-colored brilliance in the waves of snow. He couldn't help but be stunned. Then he looked left and right in disbelief. He released his divine sense again and looked at the surrounding several hundred zhang. He clapped his hands and laughed. Haha, isn't this the great flag reef that disappeared? How did it run here? Sure enough, under Xiaohua's feet was a messy reef. Countless intersecting reefs jutted out of the sea. Many parts of these reefs were damaged, showing signs of being damaged. Below these reefs, there was a layer of thin fingernail-sized protrusions. These protrusions were seven-colored and extremely dazzling. At this moment, under the illumination of the sunlight, they refracted the sunlight and looked like seven-colored stone pillars. Wasn't this the Great Flag Reef where Xiaohua and Shueshui met Kuaqiao? And Qua rhyming in the Guihe Sea? The dangers of the Great Flag Reef were still in front of him, but this Great Flag Reef was no longer the Great Flag Reef. That considerate person was also gone. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. Things were still the same, but people were different. Chapter 3109. Perhaps it's fate. Xiaohua looked to the west. Although the sun had yet to set, the west was shrouded in mist and he couldn't see anything. He sighed and thought. It's said that the deeper you fly, the more dangerous it is. Moreover, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is increasingly scarce and not suitable for cultivation. However, this Xiao has already experienced the dangers of the Qianhe Sea. I didn't expect that in the depths of the sea, there would be a place with such dense spiritual energy. Of course, this Xiao's current cultivation doesn't necessarily rely on spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Since I encountered Great Flag Reef here, this Xiao will cultivate in seclusion here. Immediately, Xiaohua found a slightly flat place and sat down cross-legged. He took out a few refined pills and put them into his mouth. Dragon transformation art and heavenly body bestowment technique were used at the same time. Strands of water-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth were produced nearby like a hurricane and rushed into Xiaohua's body. Soon the sun set and the stars filled the sky. Countless astral powers from the outer realms blew down. Not only did it cover Xiaohua, even the vicinity of Great Flag Reef was gradually submerged in the astral powers. Under the Qianhe Sea, the fishes were attracted by the astral powers and gathered together. Unknowingly, several months had passed like this. Xiaohua had gradually become accustomed to this kind of lonely cultivation. Every time he woke up from a short period of seclusion, he would immediately enter the space. Although the inside of the netherworld didn't change at all, Xiaohua's heart was at ease every time he saw the two purple balls on the netherworld bamboo and netherworld lotus. Gradually, the grief and indignation began to calm down. Whether it was the cultivation of the Tao sect or the Buddha's Sarira, they were all steadily recovering. However, the heart of elixir of the Confucian cultivator had once again exceeded Xiaohua's expectations. In just a few short months, Sword Heart Xiaohua had already successfully transformed the foundation of the 18th layer of the Carefree Heart Sutra of the Middle Dantian into the righteous Qi of the Confucian cultivator, using a secret technique. He had passed through the most basic stage of refining essence into Qi of the Confucian cultivator. Moreover, the righteous Qi was gradually fusing with the heart of core. When the time was ripe, he could immediately use the torch imparting technique to directly receive the crystallization of Confucianism within the heart of core. Thus, in one fell swoop, he would enter the true stage of refining qi and returning spirit. Xiaohua even has a feeling that with the foundation of the 18th layer of the qi refining realm in his middle dantian, his Confucian cultivation technique might even surpass that of Taoist and Buddhist cultivators, allowing him to refine the spirit and return to the void. He might even be able to reach the final stage of the void refinement fusion stage. Little Yellow, Little Black, and Little Silver also came out of Xiaohua's space many times. Especially after coming out at night and obtaining the Star Force, he no longer wanted to cultivate in the space at night. After Xiaohua heard Xiaohei's explanation, he suddenly understood. Although he didn't know what was around him at night, it was obvious that this was the thing that he refined when he closed his eyes to refine pills at night. Since this thing was useful to Blackie and the others, he naturally kept them by his side. Time is the song of Zhaoga. After a song is sung, another song will rise. When this Xiao returns to the Dawn Rain continent, it will be the time of Zhaoga's prime. Xiaohua woke up one day and checked his cultivation base. Confidence rose in his heart. He looked in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent in the west and said indifferently. Then, Xiaohua entered the space and took some pills from the green-robed Xiaohua. He came out and was about to take them and go into seclusion again. Little Silver, who was next to Xiaohua, suddenly became impatient and flew to Xiaohua's side. Lying on Little Yellow's back on the reef, Little Silver hurriedly chirped. It was strange. If they were inside the space, Xiaohua would be able to understand what Little Silver was saying, but outside the space, Xiaohua couldn't. Roar Roar Little Yellow was a little impatient, and seemed to be blaming Little Silver. But Little Silver's little tail curled up pitifully in midair and trembled slightly. He held his paws in front of his chest, looking so pitiful that even Xiaohua's heart ached a little when he saw it. Without another word, Xiaohua sent Little Yellow and the other two into the space. His own mind also turned into a jade archive and Xiaohua entered it. What are you doing? Little Yellow's voice rang out. Can't you see that Mummy is cultivating outside? Mummy, Mummy, Little Silver's small voice rang out. Mummy, tell Mummy that I feel something. Let's go. Boy feels that something very powerful is coming. What powerful thing? How come Mummy doesn't know? Little Yellow was about to scold Little Silver, when Jade Archive Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air, and cursed inwardly. Although Xiaohua had escaped the pursuit of perfected Du, Yi and kindness Shengzi and escaped with his life through the triple array, it was obvious that perfected Du, Yi and kindness Shengzi had been entrusted by someone to chase after Xiaohua. The two of them and Xiaohua had both disappeared, so how could the people behind them not ask about it? Xiaohua had encountered the triple array, but that didn't mean that everyone who entered the depths of Kueha Sea would encounter it. What if someone else also came after him? Damn it. Jade Archive Xiaohua almost slapped his forehead. Why did I overlook this? Although Xue Xue predicted that I would definitely be able to escape if I went deep into Kueha Sea, she didn't say that I would definitely be able to escape the pursuit of those two people. I still haven't fully comprehended the capital stars array, and I haven't refined enough jade talismans, so I can't escape their search on Great Flag Reef. Thinking this, Xiaohua didn't dare hesitate as he hurriedly escaped from the space. He didn't linger at all as he activated the wind escape technique and flew east again. He had only flown for a few li when a powerful and ice-cold divine sense came from the north like frost. It swept past Xiaohua and immediately locked onto him. An irresistible coldness mixed with sharpness instantly pierced Xiaohua's divine sense. Moreover, it followed the divine sense and attacked Xiaohua's Naiwan palace. An image of a figure more than 10 zhang tall, surrounded by black qi and with a dozen or so huge tentacles instantly appeared in Xiaohua's mind. Xiaohua screamed with almost no strength to fight back as he fell from the sky. He fell into the water with a splash. Seeing that Xiaohua couldn't withstand a single blow, the divine sense that had hit him immediately withdrew and swept elsewhere. However, the remnant divine sense didn't stop as it rushed towards Xiaohua's Naiwan palace. Buzz golden light flashed on Xiaohua's Naiwan palace as the rabbit talisman appeared and blocked the divine sense. Phew, Xiaohua fell into the water. Seeing that the rabbit talisman was successful, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. He didn't dare to devour the divine sense and allowed it to slowly disappear. Then he activated his magic power, used the water avoidance technique, and quietly went south from the bottom of the water. After flying for a few li, Xiaohua came out of the water again. With a flash of black qi, he used the ink trace concealment technique, which was even more handy than before, and quickly escaped towards the east. In the north, less than 100 miles away from the Great Flag Reef, there was a sea beast that was more than 100 feet in size. It was rushing towards the Great Flag Reef at a speed that was several times faster than the flying boat. The sea beast waved its dozens of huge tentacles in the air. Every time it waved its tentacles, there would be a whooshing sound. It was the sound of the air being torn apart by the tentacles. Not long after, the sea beast appeared in the vicinity of Great Flag Reef. With a rumbling sound, a powerful current emerged from the surface of the sea and carried the sea beast into the air. The huge body of the sea beast circled around the entire Great Flag Reef a few times before it landed at the place where Xiaohua was meditating earlier with a rumbling sound. It paused for a moment. Roar, roar, a few frustrated roars came from the back of the sea beast. Then, the sea beast waved its two tentacles and smashed down on Great Flag Reef. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A series of collapsing sounds could be heard. At least 30% of Great Flag Reef had been destroyed by the sea beast. The sea beast was still unwilling to give up. It suddenly charged into the depths of the sea, causing waves that soared into the sky and crashed against the Great Flag Reef. Its enormous body gradually disappeared, and its direction was the direction that Xiaohua had headed to earlier. South. Damn it, Xiaohua used the trace concealment technique to quickly fly towards the east. While escaping, he cursed. This Xiao thought it was those two old bastards from Immortal Ascension School and Immortal Music Sect chasing after me. It turned out to be an extremely powerful sea beast. AI, it's no wonder. This Kueha Sea is the world of sea beasts. It would be strange if there weren't any sea beasts. Unfortunately, this Xiao's cultivation hasn't recovered yet. Otherwise, hee, how could I let you leave so easily? After that, Xiaohua didn't dare be careless. As he flew, he refined the jade talisman for the capital star array, preparing to use it when he reached a safe island. Xiaohua even let little silver out. As soon as he sensed a terrifying aura, Xiaohua immediately used the trace concealment technique to escape. Like this, he flew for several more months. Although Xiaohua was very cautious, the sea beasts encountered a lot of danger along the way. There were even a few times when he was almost killed by sea beasts. Because in the depths of Kueha Sea, there were actually more sea beasts. Furthermore, many sea beasts had special magical abilities that Xiaohua couldn't compare to. There were even some sea beasts that could detect Xiaohua's trace concealment technique and forcibly knock him out. In the end, seeing that the jade talisman for the capital star array had been refined, Xiaohua didn't dare to fly any deeper into Kueha Sea. He knew that although the spirit qi of heaven and earth was a lot richer than before, the deeper he went, the denser it would definitely be. Who knew? He might even reach a paradise. However, he already didn't have the fortune to enjoy it. If he flew any further, he would definitely become food in the stomachs of sea beasts. Let's find an island as soon as possible. Xiaohua released his Buddhist consciousness. Compared to divine thought, Buddhist consciousness was, after all, simple and not easy to discover. This was something Xiaohua discovered after experiencing several dangers. There really weren't many islands in the depths of Kueha Sea, but even so, most of them were occupied by some strange sea beasts. As soon as they saw Xiaohua approach, they would immediately rush out of the island. And even a group of sea beasts would protect the island. Seeing this, Xiaohua was very astonished. This was something he hadn't encountered when he was training in Kueha Sea the last time. Even when he was talking to the island master and elders of Sunset Island, he hadn't heard them mention it. In Xiaohua's eyes, the behavior of these sea beasts was almost the same as that of ordinary cultivators. Chapter 31:10. The sea beasts in the depths of Kueha Sea are really going to become demons. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he gave in, and went to other places to find a place to settle down. Although the strength of many sea beasts was far inferior to Xiaohua's, and Xiaohua was satisfied with the island, It was difficult for Xiaohua to have the idea of forcing them to leave their home. After all, he had escaped far away from home. Putting himself in their shoes, the soft-hearted Xiaohua couldn't be ruthless. Thus, Xiaohua had no choice but to fly towards the east for many days before he finally found a suitable island. This island was not big, only a few kilometers in radius. There were no spirit grasses or spirit trees on it, only clusters of seaweed floating around the island. The entire island was not ordinary. There were no layers of rocks or moist soil. Although the entire island had undulating hills, these hills seemed to be connected. On the hills, the ground between the hills had layers of ripples, as if waves had condensed on it. Xiaohua had been to the Flame Forest Marsh and had seen the flow of magma in the fire lake, as well as the appearance of the magma around the fire lake. Although he had never seen magma gushing out of QC, he naturally understood the origin of this lava island after thinking about it for a while. Since this lava island had emerged from the bottom of the sea, it must have been born from the fire lake at the bottom of the sea. Although the lava was rich in fire attribute world energy, it was not suitable for sea beasts that needed water attribute world energy. Moreover, it was impossible for spirit grasses and other things to grow here, so it seemed that no sea beasts had come to occupy this island. Forget it, here it is. Xiaohua thought about the sea beast he had just encountered. Its body was incomparably huge. It was not afraid of his spiritual sense attack at all. When the wishful staff hit the sea beast's tail, it only let out a roar. Xiaohua's execution spirit Yuan light was still being sacrificially refined and could not be used. Xiaohua also couldn't use other means and could only flee in panic. He had only flown so far, and had already encountered such a powerful sea beast. If he continued to fly, he would be courting death. Xiaohua's life was very precious now. If there was nothing special, he would never take too much risk. Immediately, Xiaohua used the earth escape technique to dive into the depths of the island. Sure enough, as Xiaohua thought, the fire attribute world energy in the depths of the island was abundant. Unfortunately, the lava island's soil was simply too solid. Xiaohua was unable to go any further after using earth evasion. Xiaohua released his Buddhist perception to take a look. This place was several miles away from the sea surface. Ordinary sea beasts were unlikely to find this place, so they wouldn't be harassed. Especially for this kind of barren island. Even if the old farts from the Immortal Music sect and the Immortal Ascension sect came to look for it, they definitely wouldn't care too much. Then, Xiaohua took out the wishful staff and casually chiseled out a space of 10 feet in size. Then he released a few puppets and flew out again. After Xiaohua had finished inspecting the surrounding 10 miles, he flew back. At this time, a simple cave dwelling that was several tens of feet in size had been opened up by the puppet. Anyway, Xiaohua didn't plan to grow flowers and plants in this immortal cave. It was already enough for him to use. There aren't many islands nearby, and the closest one is around 10 kilometers away. Furthermore, the strength of that strange sea beast is only around the middle stage of foundation establishment. You won't pose any threat to me. Most of the other islands were similar to this one, made of lava. However, they are all extremely small and can't be used. Xiaohua looked around the cave dwelling. He had never been a picky person, so he was very satisfied. He stored the puppet into the space and rubbed his nose as he thought. However, Xiaohua almost jumped up immediately. Damn it, are you kidding me? On the Dawnrain continent, a foundation establishment cultivator is a senior, a realm that thousands of aura-refining disciples can't reach in their lifetime. However, in the depths of this QC, any random sea beast has the strength of a foundation establishment cultivator. Do you still want me to live? If there really comes a day when the sea beasts of this QC attack the Dawnrain continent, even if it's the cultivation 3 countries, it would be difficult to deal with, right? Moreover, I haven't gone to the depths of the QC yet. Just now, I'm afraid the one that almost stopped me was a gold core cultivator. Doesn't that mean there are even nascent soul cultivators inside? Too scary, too scary. I'd better cultivate honestly. Xiaohua was very careful. He was especially cautious as he threw out the jade talismans of the capital star array one by one. He looked at the entire array very carefully several times. Then he grabbed with his hand. The entire array flickered with brilliance and covered the cave dwelling. It disappeared without a trace from the lava island. Even so, Xiaohua was still not at ease. After a while, he came out of the star array again and released his Buddhist consciousness to explore from the outside for a while. Only then did he feel relieved. He turned to look at the misty place in the west, and narrowed his eyes. A rare trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. Then he turned around and rushed into the island. The sun and the moon are like shuttles, weaving all things in the world. Time is like a song, singing all kinds of things in the world. The feather immortal assembly back then was forgotten by others, and the great war of Tao and sword today was still forgotten by others. Even Wu Ming, the nascent soul cultivator who rose rapidly in the great war of Tao and sword, no matter how strange Xiaohua's background was, no matter whether Xiaohua was a foundation establishment cultivator or a nascent soul cultivator, no matter whether he was alive or dead, he would be forgotten by others in the end. 100 years was very long, long enough for a mortal to live 2 lives. 100 years was also very short, short enough for an early gold core cultivator to advance to the middle gold core stage. However, 100 years was absolutely important to Xiaohua. He had never been so calm before. He had never gone into seclusion like this before. He had never actively pursued power like this before. Of course, Xiaohua's harvest was also great. In the first 10 years, Xiaohua repaired the damage that the Taoist sect and the Buddhist sect suffered when they passed through the 3 layers of formations, and even converted the true qi cultivated by the Carefree Heart Sutra into the true qi of the Confucian cultivator. In the following 100 years, Xiaohua worked hard in the Buddhist sect, the Confucian cultivator, and the Taoist sect. As for the Confucian cultivator, Xiaohua used the secret technique passed down by the Confucian cultivator, and integrated the core of Dan into his own boundless righteous qi. His entire middle dantian was filled with crimson righteous qi. Just as Xiaohua expected, when he used the secret technique to convert true qi, he had already passed the refining essence into qi stage of the Confucian cultivator's cultivation method, and was advancing towards the refining qi into spirit stage. However, what Xiaohua didn't expect was that after he entered the refining qi into spirit stage, he actually stopped advancing. The core of Dan that should have disappeared didn't completely disappear, and the true qi that he used the secret technique to convert didn't produce the core of Dan that he expected. Of course, Xiaohua's hard work wasn't in vain. The thumb-sized crimson outline had already been formed, but it lacked the opportunity to condense. Now the crimson righteous qi was slowly being condensed into the outline of the core of Dan, and the outline of the core of Dan was actually condensed inside Xiaohua's sword-shaped primordial spirit. It was compatible with the sword intent of the heart sword, just like the sword heart mentioned in the sword cultivator's cultivation method. Sometimes, when Xiaohua checked the core of Dan, he was really suspicious. That Huan country's sword cultivator should be a branch of the Confucian cultivator. Wasn't that kind of sword intent that pressed forward and destroyed everything indiscriminately, the boundless righteous qi stage? But Xiaohua didn't understand this core of Dan that couldn't be formed, just like the sword heart that hadn't been condensed before. He checked the only art of Dan in his hands, but couldn't figure it out. Fortunately, although he didn't condense the core of Dan, Xiaohua also made progress in other aspects over the years. For example, Xiaohua's 9 stars soaring sun flying sword that disappeared. Because of the art of Dan of Confucian cultivators, the sword intent of these 9 flying swords still existed. Later on it condensed the outline of the core of Dan. Therefore, when Xiaohua was comprehending the Confucian cultivator's cultivation method, he suddenly had a wonderful idea. He sent a wisp of the Tai green light into the outline of the core of Dan. Later on, Xiaohua saw that this method was effective. The Tai green light could actually turn into a sword qi and fly out. It was no different from a flying sword. Therefore, he simply refined a wisp of Tai green light from the innate jellyfish, and sent it into the outline of the core of Dan, turning it into another wisp of Tai green light. Now these 2 wisps of green light were even fiercer than the previous Dream Slayer and Mountain Splitter. Under the control of the 2 primordial spirit images, they directly had the power of a spirit tool. Xiaohua originally thought that his Confucian cultivator's cultivation method would surpass the Buddhist sect's cultivation method. However, during cultivation he discovered that his Buddha Sarira's advancement was even smoother than before. Not to mention the daily cultivation of the exquisite Heart Sutra in the exquisite derivation pagoda, just the premonition of a thunderstorm, and sending the Buddha Sarira out of the great formation to be struck by lightning also accelerated the growth of the Buddha Sarira extremely quickly. In particular, with the nearly complete exquisite Heart Sutra, Xiaohua's Buddha Sarira was completely condensed from the beginning. Moreover, every time he completed a layer of cultivation, a lotus would be born on the lotus throne. Before this lotus reached perfection, it would absolutely not allow the Buddha Sarira to enter the next layer of cultivation. Therefore, the cultivation of the Buddhist sect was 10 times more difficult than that of the Confucian cultivators. But even so, Xiaohua still cultivated the Buddha Sarira to a size of 4 qi. In other words, it was the 4th layer of the Exquisite Leaf Sutra. Moreover, the 4th layer of the Exquisite Leaf Sutra began to gradually condense and advance towards the 5th layer. As for the 9 characters mantra, Xiaohua had already comprehended the 4th character in the Buddhist sect's ruins. Until now he had not made any other breakthroughs. What made Xiaohua feel a little strange was the Buddha fire. Previously, after entering the 3 layers of formation, Xiaohua saw that the situation was not good and transferred everything in his body into the space. The small bucket and other items in the Buddha fire were also the same. However, the Buddha fire itself could not be moved and could only be placed in the Buddha Sarira. However, as the Buddha Sarira was repaired, the Buddha fire was born again. Moreover, according to Xiaohua's observation, not only did the Buddha fire not receive any damage, it became even denser. In particular, the originally invisible golden threads could now be faintly seen. They swayed along with the flickering of the Buddha fire, very dazzling. This Buddha fire was the immeasurable karmic fire, Xiaohua already knew. However, he did not know what the golden threads in the immeasurable karmic fire were. However, he still took out the small bucket and used it on the night of the lightning strike. When not in use, he placed it in the Buddha fire to refine it. Chapter 31:11. Compared to the cultivation of Buddhist and Confucian cultivators, Xiaohua's biggest headache was the cultivation of Taoism. The cultivation of Taoism was originally his specialty, but now, it made it difficult for him to make any progress. Xiaohua's golden core in his lower dantian could no longer be seen. However, because it had experienced the 3 elements lightning tribulation, the 5 elements annihilation great array could not completely erase it. Xiaohua could still sense some traces. After that, Xiaohua's cultivation proved that this golden core could still be reformed. However, after 100 years of cultivation, the golden core still could not be formed. However, it was also wrong to say that it did not form. Xiaohua could clearly sense that the nebula-shaped golden core had different sizes. Moreover, they were all different sizes. Xiaohua could even sense traces of lightning on each golden core. However, his divine sense could not see them. In other words, Xiaohua's current golden core was not only a nebula, it was made up of many golden cores. Moreover, he had refined it into a dark core. A golden core that could not be sensed with divine sense. This kind of golden core, how could it conceive a baby? The jade slip in Xiaohua's hands had never recorded this before. Therefore, even though Xiaohua's cultivation had reached the late stage of golden core, he still did not have any signs of conceiving a baby. The most important thing was that he did not know how to conceive a baby, and did not know how to do it. Regarding this, Xiaohua could only describe it as the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. While smiling bitterly, Xiaohua carefully pondered. According to the strangeness of his golden core, it should be related to the 5 elements annihilation great array. That great array that annihilated all 5 elements. Although it did not destroy Xiaohua's golden core that had undergone the 3 elements lightning tribulation, it still left behind a source of trouble. The golden core could not be formed normally. Also, it was related to Qin Jian's invisible golden thread sword. At that time, Xiaohua was holding this sword. The main body of this sword was also part of the 5 elements. Naturally, it could not escape the great array's annihilation. But this flying sword was formless. The material within it might have surpassed the 5 elements and could not be obliterated by the great array. And this formless material had been rushed into Xiaohua's dantian by the great array, fusing together with the traces of Xiaohua's golden core. This might be the reason why Xiaohua's golden core was formless. In addition to cultivating Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, Xiaohua's blood drop paradise had also made small progress. His blood was originally the bright red of his bloodline, but now it was mixed with strands of devil qi. Within the devil qi, there were countless devil lights. These devil lights were sparkling and translucent, almost condensing into crystal threads. Within these crystal threads, there were also golden threads that divine will could not detect. As for the heavenly man-body infusion technique, heavenly laws embodiment technique, dragon transformation art, and the others, they had also made great progress. However, these improvements were still lacking compared to the main cultivation method that he had been cultivating. Forget it. On this day, Xiaohua came out from his meditation. He stood up impatiently and said in self-mockery, "It seems that I really don't have the fate of being pregnant." After reading these nascent soul cultivation methods, there was no improvement at all. If I don't return to the Dawn Rain continent to find some opportunities, I'm afraid that I can only seek breakthroughs in other areas. However, if I want to refine Buddhism and Confucianism to the spirit-severing stage, it will be extremely difficult. As he spoke, Xiaohua flew out of the capital star formation and rushed to the surface of the Guihe Sea. It was noon, and the scorching sun was overhead, making the entire surface of the water hot. Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked to the west. His eyes turned, and he said in a strange tone, "It's already been 100 years. Why haven't those 2 old monsters come to find me? Could it be that they really think that I have fallen? Or perhaps they have already come, but they didn't discover my capital star formation? Yes, the 2 seals on my body have already been broken. Even if they damn it." Thinking up to here, Xiaohua slapped his forehead and immediately came to a realization. That's right, since there is no seal, even if the 2 of them come before me again, as long as I use the sky-stealing sun-swapping secret technique, how could they recognize me? However, Xiaohua immediately shook his head. Forget it, I definitely can't take this risk. They are at least spirit-severing stage-old monsters. What kind of methods do they have? I will definitely not return to the Dawn Rain continent if I don't have absolute confidence. I can't afford to provoke those 2 old monsters. That old monster not far from me is probably not my opponent now, right? Today, I will go and find him. Xiaohua's gaze moved from the west to the north, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. It turned out that when Xiaohua was in seclusion, he would often come out to find some fun from time to time. Starting from the island closest to him, within a radius of 1,000 li, the sea beasts on hundreds of islands of various sizes were provoked by Xiaohua for no reason. The strength of the sea beasts on these islands was also very different, from foundation establishment to nascent soul. Xiaohua was almost invincible among the sea beasts within 1,000 li. However, 10 years ago, Xiaohua encountered a sea beast with a large body, a strong body, and profound magic power. After 300 rounds of battle, he was no match for it, and was chased for several hundred li. In the end, he had to rely on the demon realm's concealment technique to escape. Now that Xiaohua was depressed, wasn't it precisely to find that sea beast to vent his anger? Rumble, a thunderous sound was emitted from Xiaohua's body. Lightning flashed, and Xiaohua's figure streaked across the sky, flying straight towards the north. Wherever the thunderous sound passed, on the large and small islands, many sea beasts withdrew their heads. They originally wanted to come out of their caves, but they also immediately hid back. They originally wanted to release their divine sense, but they also hurriedly retracted it. The thunderous sound in broad daylight was really familiar to them. They knew that the monster, who only fought with them, but never used any killing moves. Every time he made a move, his flesh would be torn open. Very quickly, in front of Xiaohua, there was a lush green island. It was perhaps several tens of li in size. There were many huge trees towering on the island, like towers. The branches and leaves of the huge trees were like treasured swords, and at the top of the branches and leaves, There were fruits that were even bigger than a head hanging. Under the huge trees, the entire island was covered with fine white sea sand. On top of the sea sand, many crabs and other sea creatures were swimming carefreely. It was the image of an immortal island. Compared to Xiaohua's island, it couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Xiaohua still hadn't flown close when a cold divine sense swept over from the island. Xiaohua also didn't hold back, and similarly released his divine sense. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Like firecrackers, Xiaohua still hadn't seen that sea beast, but he was already fighting with it using his divine sense. Roar, an angry roar that could almost resound several li came from the depths of the island. Obviously, it had suffered a hidden loss from Xiaohua in the battle of divine senses. Soon after, the entire island rumbled, and immediately, a sea beast that was no less than 200 zhang in size flew out from the island. This sea beast was very strange. It had a square shape, and on top of its triangular head, two large eyes emitted a gloomy brilliance. Its square body was orange-red, and fist-sized protrusions were connected to each other all over its body. This sea beast had 4 tentacles. The front 2 were extremely long, more than 10 zhang in length, and the back 2 were slightly shorter. These 4 tentacles were also dark in color. The tentacles were like scissors several feet long, and when it waved, a cold light flashed. This was the first time Xiaohua saw this sea beast, and he almost thought it was a huge crab. Moreover, this sea beast's shell was very hard. Xiaohua's suppressing cloud seal smashed down, but it couldn't smash the shell. It was very strange. Of course, the strangest thing wasn't this. What puzzled Xiaohua the most was that when this sea beast flew, there was a layer of mist under its body, as if there was a layer of faint mist supporting it. Xiaohua really couldn't understand what kind of flying technique this sea beast was using. Haha, old monster crab. Xiaohua laughed, waved his hand, and took out the 3-feet-long wishful staff, and shouted, "This Xiao's weapon has finally been successfully refined. Today, I will let you know this Xiao's methods." Saying that, Xiaohua waved his hand and shouted, "Grow." The wishful staff really grew to 10 zhang, and after a few more grow, the entire wishful staff grew to a length of 10 zhang, seemingly not inferior to the sea beast's tentacles. Looking at the wishful staff in his hand, Xiaohua smiled with satisfaction, and held the wishful staff. Speaking of refining the wishful staff, it was also beyond Xiaohua's expectations. He thought that the heaven-pacifying staff was extremely easy to refine, and that it would take at most 10 years to refine it. But when he really refined it, he realized the trouble inside. To refine ordinary magic tools and magic treasures, he only needed to quench the impurities in the materials to use it. But the heaven-pacifying staff was different. The 5 elements were the 5 elements, and any other trace could not be integrated into the 5 elements star disk. Therefore, the countless materials in the soul nest were refined by the primordial spirit transformed green-robed Xiaohua bit by bit using the thunder refining technique. After refining for 100 years, he finally finished refining the materials for the heaven-pacifying staff. Fortunately, Xiaohua had obtained the thunder refining technique. Otherwise, it was really impossible to refine the 5 elements materials so pure. Later, it took more than 10 years to use the blood refining technique to fuse these materials with the 5 elements star disk. Finally, the wishful staff in Xiaohua's hand was also fused into it, refining it into a better wishful staff than the heaven-pacifying staff. In the hands of Xiaohua, the wishful staff could be shrunk to the size of an inch, and the largest could be 10 zhang, with a thickness of a few feet. Although it could not really reach the point of reaching the heavens, Xiaohua was happy to scratch his ears and cheeks. Today, Xiaohua dared to provoke the sea beast again because of the success of the wishful staff. Roar, seeing Xiaohua waving the wishful staff, the sea beast roared and waved the 2 tentacles in front of its head. Kacha kacha, sounds came from the tentacles and hit Xiaohua's wishful staff. With a loud ka sound, the wishful staff hit one of the sea beast's tentacles, and several sparks were produced. The sea beast's figure retreated a few feet. Looking at the tentacle that was hit, there were some cracks in front of it like a flying sword. Hoo! The sea beast spat out a breath of clear air, which fell on the tentacle, but the cracks quickly healed. Chapter 31:12. Oh, Xiao Hua was also stunned when he saw this. He laughed and said, "It turns out that the old monster Xia also has a secret technique. However, today is different from the last time. This Xiao will let you see this Xiao's secret technique again." As he spoke, his body trembled. Grow following this mantra. A ball of golden light appeared around Xiao Hua's body. Then, a whirlwind appeared, and countless water-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into Xiao Hua's body along with the heavenly laws embodiment technique. Very quickly, a 30-meter-tall Dharma idol appeared in front of the sea beast along with Xiao Hua's body. The sea beast didn't seem to understand what Xiao Hua was doing. When the Dharma idol appeared, the sea beast suddenly woke up, roared, and rushed toward Xiao Hua without fear. "Grow!" Xiao Hua shouted again. The thickness of the wishful steel staff was a few feet long, and it was held in the hands of Fa Xiang. Whoop! The sound of the wind whistling came from the head of the staff. Boom! There was a loud noise, and it hit the tentacles of the sea beast with great accuracy. As Xiao Hua's staff fell, the tentacles of the sea beast immediately turned into powder, and a mass of water blue blood sprayed out and scattered in the sea breeze. Moreover, the huge body of the sea beast was also repelled by the staff. "Ha ha ha!" Xiao Hua laughed. "Eat this Xiao's staff again." Immediately, Xiao Hua's staff avoided the water blue brilliance on the tentacles of the sea beast, and hit the body of the sea beast. Boom! There was another loud bang, and a water blue brilliance was born from the head of the staff. Unfortunately, this brilliance was instantly shattered by the staff. Similarly, after the brilliance, there was a gotcha sound. The previous defense that could not be broken by the seal of turning the sea was like a clay sculpture under the heavy blow of the staff, and cracks immediately appeared. Xiao Hua had no doubt that as long as he added another strike, the body of the sea beast would definitely be smashed into powder, just like the tentacles of the sea beast just now. But at this moment, Xiao Hua had just raised the staff, and a slight roar was born from the sea beast's body. A watery brilliance followed the sea beast as it opened its mouth. In an instant, it surrounded an area of several dozen feet. Xiao Hua's magic power was immediately confined, and even his divine sense was forced back into his Naiwan palace. Not only that, but Xiao Hua's Dharma idol flashed with brilliance and quickly shrank back into his body. Even the wishful steel staff fell into his hand, and turned into a 3-foot size. It was as if Xiao Hua's spiritual power was insufficient, and he was forced to defend himself. However, just as the sea beast opened its mouth and extended its sword-like tongue toward Xiao Hua's forehead, Xiao Hua sneered and opened his mouth. Puff! Primordial unity azure light flew out, streaking through the air like a waterfall. Crack! Crack! Several crisp sounds rang out. In the blink of an eye, the tiny azure light rolled several times around Xiao Hua, and the space sealed by the sea beast was immediately shattered. The sea beast was so scared that it hurriedly retracted its tongue. "Ha ha ha!" Xiao Hua laughed and threatened with the wishful steel staff in his hand. "Old monster crab, eat this Xiao's staff again." Poof! Not waiting for Xiao Hua to raise the wishful staff, the sea beast hurriedly opened its mouth again, and a dazzling brilliance emerged from there, and a water blue bead flew out of the sea beast's mouth. This bead was not round, but square. The brilliance around the bead was also condensed, and its shape was very similar to the sea beast's. With the appearance of the bead, an aura that swept across several miles was born from the bead, firmly covering Xiao Hua. This aura was terrifying, wild, and bloodthirsty. 2 thin crystal threads shot out from the eyes of the sea beast on the bead, and pierced toward Xiao Hua. With a crack, the tiny azure light immediately cut the crystal threads. Unfortunately, the crystal threads flickered and the tiny azure light cut through nothing. Amazing! Xiao Hua's expression did not change as he praised. Then, with a wave of his hand, a sword gourd appeared in his hand. Quick! Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and a faint gray color appeared from the sword gourd. This gray color seemed to have a nose and eyes, but now it was too blurry and could not be seen clearly. However, with the appearance of the gray color, the unclear mouth and nose faced the sea beast. The sea beast's bead immediately stopped in midair, and even the crystal threads were instantly retracted. At the same time as the crystal threads were retracted, 1 green and 1 red sword light flew out and landed on the sea beast's neck. Of course, it only landed on the bead, not on the bead. Hee, this three-legged golden crow's soul essence is really powerful. It can even nail the soul essence of this sea beast. Xiaohua looked at the sword gourd in his hand, and the sword light that landed on the sea beast's neck, and smiled proudly. This sword gourd was naturally the execution spirit yuan light, that was refined into the three-legged golden crow's soul essence. Return. Xiaohua knew that this sea beast's cultivation was not easy. Unless it was absolutely necessary or he needed this sea beast to refine some magic treasure, Xiaohua would not easily make a move. Along with Xiaohua's incantation, the gray color on the sword gourd entered the sword gourd, and the two sword lights also flew back from the sea beast's neck, and were about to enter the sword gourd. But right at this moment, a PU suddenly occurred. The oceanic beast's aqua-blue pearl suddenly opened its mouth, and a watery brilliance sprayed out, and instantly landed in front of Xiaohua. Damn it! Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that this sea beast could not distinguish right from wrong, and did not know that he was being lenient. Now that it had a chance to live, it immediately counterattacked. Fortunately, Xiaohua's execution spirit yuan light was in midair. Xiaohua did not use any other magic and pointed his finger. Shua shua. The two sword lights landed on the brilliance. He thought that the execution spirit yuan light would definitely be able to scatter the brilliance. However, what was even more out of Xiaohua's expectations was that when the execution spirit yuan light landed on the brilliance, it was as if it was stuck. It was simply unable to cut it. When the brilliance arrived in front of Xiaohua, an extremely strange sweet fragrance mixed with the smell of meat rushed into Xiaohua's mouth and nose. Xiaohua's mind sank. It was as if endless illusions rushed into his mind. Xiaohua was greatly shocked. He did not dare to be negligent and hastily used the God Guidance secret technique. At the same time, he felt his mind become clear. A burst of ear-piercing sizzling sound was heard. It turned out that at this moment, the watery brilliance had already eroded Xiaohua's protective golden light. It actually destroyed a lot of Xiaohua's Taoist robe. At the same time, Xiaohua's faintly pale golden skin was exposed under the Taoist robe. This watery brilliance is actually so powerful. Xiaohua felt a numbing pain on the surface of his skin, as if it was being bitten by ants. He could not help but be slightly astonished. He was clear in his heart that in the past 100 years, when he used the heavenly thunder of the heavenly sea to temper the Buddha's Sarira, he also used the celestial body strengthening technique to temper his physical body. Right now, his physical body was perhaps several times stronger than before. This sea beast's innate divine ability was really powerful. Roar, seeing that the brilliance had already succeeded, the sea beast roared again. The blue pearl flashed again and spat out several more brilliances. This brilliance was even faster than before. Forget it. Xiaohua originally wanted to check his own cultivation. Seeing that the sea beast had spat out these brilliances, and that the blue color on the pearl had weakened, he knew that it was about to go all out. He really did not have any reason to take the sea beast's life. With a thought, lightning flashed around his body and forced the blue brilliance away. His figure soared into the sky. With a splash, he crashed into the heavenly sea. Roar, the sea beast was actually happy. The floating cloud under its body moved and chased after Xiaohua. Naturally, the blue pearl also entered its mouth. However, when the sea beast reached the edge of the island, it stopped again. A sea beast that could cultivate to nearly nascent soul strength. Although it had not transformed, it already had intelligence. How could it really chase after him? A clear sound came from the sea beast's mouth. A several zhang thick beam of light then rushed out from the sea beast's mouth and landed on the heavenly sea. A dense water-based spiritual energy of heaven and earth was born from the beam of light and fell into the sea beast's stomach. The previously dim pearl gradually recovered its luster. Sigh, this soul execution vital light at this moment. Xiaohua was using the water avoidance art to travel in the heavenly sea. In his hands were two flying swords of the soul execution vital light. At this moment, the flying swords could no longer be called flying swords. They were two sparkling and translucent jade-like objects. They jumped around in Xiaohua's hands as if they had intelligence. Xiaohua's gaze fell on the two flashing brilliances, and he could not help but sigh. They can already be used as spirit artifacts. It's a pity that they are not too sharp. They are somewhat inferior to the Tai green light. However, this Tai green light is part of the 5 elements and cannot be refined into the soul execution vital lights yin and yang. In the future, I still need to find the magnetic aurora. After retrieving the soul execution vital light, Xiaohua looked at the jade green sea bed. Countless large and small fishes swam around leisurely. His heart moved. That's not right. This old monster Xie should already have the strength of a Yuanying. In the Dawn Rain continent, it is a master of an area. If we were to talk about it, even if it is not an 8th grade monster, it should be a 7th grade monster, right? Why is it still unable to transform? If this old monster Xie transformed, what would it look like? I understand. Xiaohua laughed as he thought. Suddenly he realized. This old monster Xie is actually not a 7th grade monster. Perhaps it is only a 6th grade or even a 5th grade monster. However, it is not an ordinary sea beast. It has a powerful body. What is special is that in this heavenly sea, it can fight with other sea beasts. In addition, the water-based spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the heavenly sea is very dense. This is where the sea beasts can use their divine abilities. Therefore, even though the old monster Xie's cultivation is low, its strength is outstanding. At the very least, it far surpasses the ordinary cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent. This is the reason why it is commonly said that overseas cultivators are more powerful than Dawn Rain continent cultivators. In that case, this Xiao can also be considered as an overseas cultivator, right? Xiaohua chuckled. He slightly raised his head, and his gaze landed on a string of bubbles in the distance. Oh, I'm afraid it is the corpses of some sea beasts. Under the bubbles, a large lump of black thing slowly floated up. Xiaohua took a look and flew over. There are many sea beasts in this heavenly sea. They would often fight for islands and other reasons. Even though Xiaohua did not deliberately attack and kill these sea beasts, the number of sea beasts' corpses he picked up in the vicinity was extremely large. Chapter 31:13. Although the monster cores in these sea beasts' corpses are gone, their bodies are extremely tough. Whether it's their tentacles, claws, etc., even their shells are the best materials for refining magic tools. How can Xiaohua not take them when he sees them? Therefore, when he sees something appear again, he goes over very naturally. However, when he reaches the thing floating in front of him, Xiaohua frowns again. He sees that it's a few corpses connected together. The corpses no longer have flesh, only fragments of skeletons are left. Even the skeletons have shrunk into a few short joints, as if the corpses were burned by waves of fire. Outside the corpses, there are some damaged armors. Most of the armors are greenish-black in color. There are also condensed beads of different sizes on the surface of the armors, like a layer of greenish-black pearls. From the looks of the armors, it's very obvious that these corpses should be cultivators. However, what puzzles Xiaohua is that these skeletons are very thick, far beyond Xiaohua's understanding. Xiaohua makes a rough estimate. They should be 2 to 3 times stronger than ordinary cultivators. What's going on here? Xiaohua sees that the armors are already damaged. There's no possibility of refining anymore. He doesn't move forward, only looking at those strange skeletons in a daze. Oh, there Xiaohua takes another look. On one of the skeleton's joints, there's a thumb-sized semicircular ring. It's a storage ring. Xiaohua understands. His eyes brighten. He grabs the semicircular ring and it falls into his hand. Sure enough, when his divine sense enters it, there's a small space that's about to collapse inside. Inside this space, there's a strange thumb-sized thing floating. Xiaohua takes that thing out. Seeing that the corpses have already passed over his head and floated to the surface of QC, he sighs and throws that already burned storage ring into QC. The thing in Xiaohua's hand looks black, but there are bits of gold inlaid inside, like bits of gold light in the dark night. Although this thing is thumb-sized, it's not light. However, when Xiaohua's divine sense sweeps over it, he can't see anything strange about it. Truly strange. Xiaohua weighed the thing in his hand. The overseas cultivators are indeed different from Dawn Rain continent. These things should be used by the Scorching Sun Island, the Icicle Island, the Gales Island, and the Yensen Island, which Kwahung mentioned. Unfortunately, apart from a token and a sarira with a Buddha statue on it, Xiaohua didn't obtain any secret techniques from the storage bag and storage ring, so he didn't know how to examine them. Let's cultivate first. Xiaohua thought for a moment and suppressed the idea of going to the 4 islands. The 2 spirit-severing stage-old monsters will definitely place their disciples in the 4 islands. I haven't cultivated to the nascent soul stage, so I can't be sure of victory. I definitely won't appear. Right, didn't he obtain many body mutilation secret techniques in Inkcloud Dark Forest? Now that the primordial spirit of the green-robed man was no longer refining the sky-leveling staff, it was better for him to read more about those secret arts. Who knows, he might be able to find something. Moreover, this Zhao's Buddha Sarira has already reached 4 feet. It's time for me to cultivate this Buddhist sex heaven's eye to the 4th level. Speaking of this, the Ardent Fire Mountain's secret techniques are really useful. Although this heaven's eye is a Buddhist sex magical ability, with the help of the secret techniques and Inkcloud's brain, the advancement is equally miraculous. If I can cultivate this heaven's eye to the 9th level, I'm afraid I can really see the 9 heavens and the 9 underworlds. Soon after, Xiaohua flew to another place and found a few powerful sea beasts within 1,000 miles to fight a few times. Moreover, he casually found some things in the nearby sea. Soon he returned to the cave and began to cultivate in seclusion again. Several years passed quickly. On this day, the wind was calm and the waves were calm. The sun had just risen above the sea. Countless seabirds spread their wings and soared between the sea and the sky. On the rippling sea surface, there were also tens of thousands of sea fish swimming. From time to time, there would be pillars of water soaring to the sky in the distance. At the same time, the faint roar of sea beasts would follow. It seemed that this day was no different from an ordinary day in 10,000 years. Gee, a clear cry sounded. From the northern horizon, a speck of 5 colors appeared. When it got closer, it was a several zhang large rainbow luan. One could see the rainbow luan spreading its 5-colored wings. With a clear cry, it split the sky and immediately flew more than 10 li. The 2 long tail feathers on the rainbow luan's tail slightly trembled. It was very eye-catching in the fierce wind that rolled up behind the rainbow luan. On the rainbow luan's back sat a woman. This woman looked to be around 30 years old. She looked very dignified. The woman had a pair of bright eyes that seemed to be able to see through the various states of the world. However, at this moment, her eyes were lowered to look at the misty sea surface. She was faintly anxious. The strangest thing was that this woman wasn't wearing an ordinary Taoist robe. Instead, it was a crescent moon white robe. This robe was very simple and didn't have any colored thread. What was special about this woman was that she even wore a strange hat on her head. Between the hat and her ears, there wasn't a single strand of black hair. Stop! The woman suddenly opened her mouth. Her pearly white teeth were slightly exposed. Her words were also different from the common speech of the Dawn Rain continent. The rainbow luan was very intelligent. Its fluttering wings immediately retracted. At the rainbow luan's belly feathers, a 5-colored cloud appeared and supported the rainbow luan. The several zhang large rainbow luan, and the strange woman stopped in midair. The woman stood up from the rainbow luan. Her brows were still slightly furrowed. She raised her leg and stood in midair. A faint cloud of mist appeared under the woman's feet. This woman was actually barefoot. Her sparkling and translucent jade-like ankles looked very soft and smooth, emitting a faint brilliance. As she stepped on the cloud of mist, an indescribable elegance was born from it. The woman stood on the cloud and lowered her head to look at the vibrant sea surface. Then, she frowned slightly and actually closed her eyes. However, the woman's ears on both sides emitted a faint luster. This luster flickered slightly, as if the woman was using a divine ability. After a long time, the woman's ears moved. She raised her eyebrows and her brows relaxed. However, when the woman opened her eyes, the luster on her ears had disappeared. The woman stretched out her hand again, and took out a small jade slip from her bosom. She glanced at it and a smile appeared on her face. She seemed to be muttering to herself. Ba, this West Sea, is really too far away. This so-called island is densely covered in stars. Who can tell which one is which? Su Tanyue is really good at scheming. He actually found this place. But, as the woman spoke, she raised her leg and sat on the rainbow luan's back. She gently patted the rainbow luan's back. The rainbow luan let out a clear cry and flapped its wings. The wind surged and the clouds moved as it flew into the distance. The woman's voice lingered in the air. Although this place is far west, it doesn't look extremely desolate. Could it be that place? The woman flew thousands of kilometers to the west and stopped several times. However, she didn't get off the rainbow luan. Instead, her ears emitted light again, and she adjusted her direction several times. In the end, the woman stopped near the lava island where Xiaohua cultivated. Yes, it should be here. The woman finally took out the jade slip and checked it before getting off the rainbow luan's back. She stepped on the clouds and stopped in midair. The rainbow luan spread its wings and flew around the woman. At this time, the clouds were scattered and light mist was gushing out. The afterglow of the setting sun scattered everywhere. Not only were the clouds gorgeous and the light mist faintly discernible, but even the rainbow luan's feathers reflected the orange sun and looked extremely poignant. The woman looked at all of this with a slight smile. Her eyes flickered as if she was a little obsessed. Roar! In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, there was another roar. However, after this roar, there were roars and hisses frequently. Bursts of explosions and rumbles also followed. The originally calm scenery was completely destroyed. Not only was the rainbow luan's flight a little weak, but the woman's faint smile also disappeared. There was a trace of displeasure in her eyes. Just as this displeasure appeared, whoosh on the surface of the sea to the south, a wave of several dozen feet was set off. The wave dispersed the mist and rushed to the bottom of the woman's body with strands of blood. Boom! There was a loud sound that soared into the sky. The waves seemed to be boiling as they surged up. One by one, a several dozen feet tall human figure suddenly appeared from the waves. The moment the human figure appeared, it immediately let out a roar towards the sky. A formless sound wave quickly spread out. When the rainbow luan, who had already stopped flying, heard this sound, its wings couldn't help but tremble. Its body also quickly shrank. Humph! When the woman saw this, she coldly snorted. Her body emitted a faint brilliance that covered the rainbow luan. The rainbow luan landed in front of the woman. The woman shook her sleeve and the rainbow luan flew into it and disappeared. Looking at the human figure again, it had already stopped in midair. The waves that surrounded the human figure had already fallen, creating a splash of water that was several dozen feet tall. It gradually disappeared. Looking at the human figure again, it wasn't a real person. Aside from the khaki-colored armor on its body, its strong limbs were very similar to a human's, but its head was a hairy leopard's head. This leopard's head was very ferocious. The khaki-colored pupils in its bell-like eyes flashed with bloodlust. Leopard stripes streaked across the mane on its face. A few strands of blood still flowed from its bloody mouth. It had clearly just eaten something raw. In the left claw of the leopard-headed human figure, there was also a sea beast tentacle that was stained with blood. In the right claw, there was a thumb-sized demon core that was releasing a water-blue brilliance. The leopard-headed human figure's ferocious gaze swept past the woman. There was a flash of surprise in its eyes. It opened its bloody mouth and unexpectedly spoke. "Little girl, are you the immortal friend that Su Swansea invited?" Humph! The woman indifferently glanced at the leopard-headed human figure and coldly snorted. She didn't answer. "Roar, I'm asking you a question." The leopard-headed human figure suddenly opened its bloody mouth. A strong stench rushed out and rushed toward the woman. "You're courting death." The woman clearly looked down on the leopard-headed humanoid and did not bother to reply. Seeing the leopard-headed humanoid being so rude, the woman coldly snorted and pointed her finger. A huge fireball flew out from the air and exploded between the two with a bang. It was precisely the leopard-headed humanoid's breath that was incinerated. Moreover, dozens of sparks flew out from the fireball and split into 3 different directions, rushing towards the leopard-headed humanoid. Chapter 31:14. The leopard-headed humanoid squinted his eyes and waved his claws. The tentacles and monster core of the sea beast disappeared at the same time. Then he waved his right claw in the air and a yellow brilliance appeared. It turned into a dozen plumes of smoke and dust that rushed into the sparks. Boom, boom, boom. After a series of muffled sounds, the sparks disappeared and the smoke and dust slowly dispersed. The woman raised her eyebrows and seemed a little surprised. Then she raised her jade-like hand slightly and a golden cauldron the size of a fist appeared. As soon as the small cauldron appeared, the space within a foot of it distorted rapidly. It was as if the temperature of the small cauldron was so high that it was about to melt the space. The space-splitting cauldron? You're Qingchen from the Great Snow Mountain. The leopard-headed humanoid was slightly stunned when he saw the small cauldron. He could not help but exclaim in surprise. Yes, it's me. The woman heard him and replied proudly. If you're afraid, tell me your name immediately and let me see where you're from. If you're related, I'll let you off for the sake of Suzhuoliang. Otherwise, otherwise, what can you do? The leopard-headed humanoid sneered. He opened his mouth and a square box the size of a thumb flew out. The box was square and did not look special. However, when the leopard-headed humanoid breathed a mouthful of demonic aura on it, a reddish-yellow brilliance rushed into the air, and a mountain peak a few feet high appeared in the brilliance. The magnificent mountain box? How did you get this treasure? Seeing this, Master Qingchen's expression changed, and his hand that was controlling the space-splitting cauldron slowed down. This treasure was originally mine. Where did I get it from? The leopard-headed humanoid sneered. Although your space-splitting cauldron is powerful, it can't do anything to my magnificent mountain box. Do you still dare to fight with me? Why wouldn't I dare? I'd like to see. What ability do you have to control the magnificent mountain box? Master Qingchen sneered. He lifted his hand and a tricolored flame rushed out from the space-splitting cauldron. Don't worry, my two fellow immortals at this moment. A loud voice came from afar. When Master Qingchen heard this, he bent the middle finger of his right hand and flicked it gently. The 3-foot-long fire dragon that had flown out of the cracked void cauldron returned to the small cauldron. When she looked up, she saw a golden sword light flying toward them from the eastern horizon like a meteor. In just a moment, a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and big eyes dressed in a scholar's robe appeared in front of them on a flying sword. The leopard-headed man also snorted coldly. He opened his mouth again and spat out a mouthful of demonic energy. The so-called magnificent mountain box shrank back to the size of a thumb and fell into his mouth. It's all my fault. As soon as the middle-aged man landed, he immediately cupped his fists and said with a smile, because this treasure hunt in the West Sea is too important, I didn't dare to neglect it. Therefore, other than this one's name, this one did not reveal the names of the others. My apologies for causing a misunderstanding between the two of you. It doesn't matter. Master Qingchen smiled faintly and said, Su Tanyue has already made this clear. You don't have to apologize now. Su Swanzi. The leopard-headed man opened his mouth and shouted, I know you have a wide range of friends, but I still underestimated you. The little beauty of the Great Snow Mountain was not someone ordinary people could meet. You actually invited her here. Your relationship is definitely not ordinary. This middle-aged man was Suzhuoliang, whom Master Qingchen had mentioned. However, when Suzhuoliang heard this, his expression did not change at all. He glanced at the leopard-headed man indifferently and said with a smile, Leopard Immortal, you are frank and outspoken. You say whatever is on your mind. You are much better than ordinary people with dirty thoughts. However, I still have to disappoint Leopard Jinren. Among the treasures of the West Sea, there's something that Master Pure Dust wants. Therefore, although I'm only acquainted with the Dharmakaya, once I asked for your help, you immediately agreed. Ha ha ha, I don't believe it. The leopard-headed humanoid named Leopard Spiritual Master laughed. But at this moment, the sound of a crane's cry came from the distant horizon. Suzhuoliang and the others looked up and saw a faint white spot on the sea surface in the northeast, which was already somewhat dark. Good. Suzhuoliang clapped his hands and said with a smile, The other two are also here. However, when the white spot flew closer, It was revealed that there was an old man sitting cross-legged on the back of a white crane that was several feet in size. The old man was dressed in a linen robe. His forehead was very wide, his eyes were very bright, and his white hair was fluttering like snow. When the old man floated down from the back of the white crane, a white cloud immediately appeared under his feet. Coupled with the emerald cane in his hand, he really looked like an immortal descending to the mortal world. The white crane, like Master Qing Chen's rainbow phoenix, sensed leopard immortal's breath from far away and flew very hesitantly. The old man also flicked his big sleeve and kept the white crane in it. Then he flew over and looked at the three people. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I greet you all." Su Zhuoyang heard that the old man not only did not report his name, but also frowned slightly with a complicated expression on his face. After returning the greeting, he whispered, "What's wrong? That person can't come?" "Alas, yes." The old man sighed. "Man proposes, God disposes. That person has already agreed. I was waiting at the foot of the mountain, but before I left, there was an important matter that he had to attend to. Brother Su, I have failed you." It's okay." Su Zhuoyang's brows relaxed and he said with a smile, "It's best that we have Zen Master Liao Kong. Without him we can still enter." "Zen Master Liao Kong?" Master Qingchen was surprised and asked, "Are you talking about Zen Master Liao Kong of Huanglian Temple?" "Yes." Su Zhuoyang said with a bitter smile. "Isn't it Zen Master Liao Kong, who is proficient in Buddhist arrays? With his help, we are naturally not afraid of the arrays of the West Sea relic. Therefore, although I am not very familiar with Zen Master Liao Kong, I especially entrusted Brother Chu." "Alas, Zen Master Liao Kong definitely can't come at this time." Master Qingchen sighed. "The Feast of All Souls at Dong, and Zen Temple is about to open. He is going to preach." Hearing this, Su Zhuoyang laughed again. "Since Zen Master Liao Kong is not coming, then he won't come. This is God's will. Since we are here, we naturally have our fate. Let me introduce you. This is Brother Chu Muhuan of the Chu family in the hidden immortal continent." Then Su Zhuoyang raised his hand and pointed at the old man. When the old man heard Su Zhuoyang mention Zen Master Liao Kong's name, he knew that he would not return empty-handed this time. He also smiled and cupped his hands. "I am Chu Muhuan. Greetings to the two fellow immortals. I am Qingchen from the Great Snow Mountain in the Pure Land world. Greetings to Chu Tanyue." Master Qingchen put her palms together and bowed to return the greeting. "I am Leopard Spiritual Master from the Flat Forest Mountain in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm." Leopard Spiritual Master raised his two claws casually and cupped his hands casually to salute. Seeing that the three people had finished their greetings, Su Zhuoyang said with a smile, "Since everyone is familiar with each other, we will be in the same boat in the following time. This West Sea relic is really famous. I have heard about it for many years, but I never thought that one day I would personally come to explore the true face of this treasure. Especially with the help of the fellow immortals, I will definitely return with a full load this time." Su Swansea Leopard Spiritual Master was dissatisfied. "We have already introduced ourselves. Why don't you say anything? Although we all know you, this is the basic etiquette of the hidden immortal continent, right?" Of course, Su Zhuoyang patted his forehead and said with a bitter smile, "I really neglected it. Thank you for your reminder, fellow immortal leopard." Then Su Zhuoyang cupped his hands and bowed. "I am Su Zhuoyang, a disciple of the hidden immortal continent's Fecta sect. I am not proficient in the 6 arts, but I like the art of divination. Thus, I won the title of Divine Diviner. I am not talented, so I am ashamed." "That's right." Leopard Spiritual Master also cupped his hands and returned the salute. "Your hidden immortal continent is known as the origin of etiquette. If you don't remember this basic etiquette in your heart, who would be convinced?" "Fellow immortal leopard, you are wrong." Su Zhuoyang stood up and said seriously, "My hidden immortal continent is the inheritance of Confucian cultivators, which emphasizes on the contention of 100 schools of thought. I naturally don't know who would belittle the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, but I know that my Fecta sect never asks about one's background. Otherwise, I would not be able to make friends with fellow immortals." Of course I am not talking about you. Leopard Spiritual Master laughed. I can come here because of your face. If it was someone else. Leopard Spiritual Master glanced at Master Ching Chun, who was not far away. At this time, Master Ching Chun had recovered his solemn appearance. He looked straight ahead as if he did not hear what Leopard Spiritual Master said. Su Zhuoyang smiled in his heart. He knew what Leopard Spiritual Master meant, but he could not say a word about this matter. Brother Su, Chu Muhuan seized the opportunity to ask, if Zen Master Liao Kong does not come, how can we break the array? Where is the West Sea relic in the West Sea? At this time, you should tell us the location. We can consult together and work together to make sure nothing goes wrong. Hearing Chu Muhuan mention the West Sea relic, Leopard Spiritual Master's eyes lit up. His withered yellow eyes no longer looked at Master Ching Chun, but stared at Su Zhuoyang. Yes, Brother Chu is right. Su Zhuoyang nodded and explained. This is the time to discuss it. However, although I am the initiator of this treasure hunt, I am not the only one. What? There are other people? Chu Muhuan was stunned and frowned. Brother Su, why didn't you say this earlier? I can come to the West Sea, because I value your integrity. If it was someone else who initiated it, I wouldn't dare to believe it. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.